So we get 3 instead of awesome.
Do you need a report?
Yeah.
We encourage that, especially if you can get Mr. Irvine to join you. I've heard he can, no matter what.
Okay.
We can dance.
Introduce yourselves.
I'm Tyler Fisher.
Kelsey Kobus. I'm Ivy Benrod.
Welcome.
Thank you. So, homecoming. The Spooktacular is on Saturday, October 27th. We meet and greet as different characters and take pictures. Think Pink fundraiser for breast cancer is for the rest of the month, and the game for it was last Friday. There are games and decorations for kids at the Spooktacular, and Muskego Women's Club Peppermint Fair is Sunday, November 4th.
And Student Council is organizing all of those events.
Awesome.
So now for some sports. So the girls swim. So last week there was a dual meet against Arrowhead. And then for upcoming for that, there's the JV conference on Thursday and varsity conference on Saturday. For boys football, the varsity team is undefeated. They won their homecoming game against Ocon. Their most recent game was last Friday, which was against Muskego. Their state game is in the future. And then for the freshmen, the A and B team had undefeated seasons, and which ended last week. The JV is also undefeated. For cross country, there was a conference meet on last Saturday. Boys JV and varsity placed 4th, and girls JV and varsity placed 1st. There's also some upcoming meets for that, which is the invitational, sectional, and state. And then for girls volleyball, the JV, both teams the conference meet was last Saturday. And then for boys volleyball, they are number 6 in the state for varsity. They have several games coming up. The most recent ones were against Indian Trail. Those were for JV and varsity. And then the ones they have in the future on October 17th are versus Kettle Moraine. And those are both JV teams and varsity. And then for the boys soccer varsity, they have games on Saturday, or they had games on Saturday the 13th versus Greendale. And the varsity WIAA regional is to be determined. And then for girls tennis, the varsity team has the WIAA individual state we're on October 11th, 12th, and 13th, and all the other games are to be determined. And then just at the high school, there's a choir concert coming up for all choirs on Wednesday, October 17th.
Does anyone have any questions? Because they look eager to answer all of them. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Nice job.
All right, moving on to item 4, public forum. This is your opportunity. Anyone in the public here to come forward and bring stuff forward to us? Todd, that would be you.
Well, they're public students, right?
Chance to dance?
No. Moving ahead to item 5, superintendent's report. Director.
Okay, so we'll start with sort of the overview of what happened last year. So our quality report, our WSAS, the Wisconsin, the Student Accountability System, which is all of the assessments that our state requires, the Forward, for example, 3rd through 8th, and Aspire in the high school, as well as the ACT, are all unembargoed now. So we are able to complete our quality report from last year. And so, as we have done in the past, we'll kind of highlight some of the report for you tonight, and just know that it's there for you. It's also will be posted tomorrow, as well as our new fast facts. Then we're able to kind of highlight some of those aspects on our on that one pager. So we have a 2018 fast facts, which is also attached for you, but then will also be posted in our schools as soon as we feel comfortable from the standpoint of having as much data and as accurately represented as possible. Certainly if there are things that you see in here that you think we could highlight in a different way, We are open to that input as well. We look at these documents as living documents, and so we add to them as we get more information, or we find that we're tracking something that's important for our public to know, we'll include it. So please know that. And then, so we'll kind of turn it over, and you can, I don't know, who's starting? Courtney, okay.
Yes. So I will start us out on page 6 of the quality report. So there are 2 graphs on that page. Achievement on our WSAS forward assessments for students in grades 3 through 8. So we're looking at the percentage of students that were at or above proficiency. And it's the county comparable. So ELA, our literacy assessments in Waukesha County for K-12 districts. And so the first graph is showing Muskego Norway schools as second in the county for students, again, in 3rd through 8th grade. And those were students scoring advanced or proficient. And then the second graph on that page is showing that we are tied with the Hamilton School District with 72.8% of students proficient or advanced on mathematics. So that first graph is ELA, second graph would be mathematics with the county comparables.
So if you go ahead and flip over to page 7, you can see very similar graphs representing our students with IEPs. And as you know, this is an incredibly academically competitive county that we live in. And proud to announce that our students in grades 3 through 8 on the ELA assessment that was on the Wisconsin State Assessment for English Language Arts, they are at second for our county. And then also similarly for math, are second in that.
Okay, so then that takes us to page 8 with the percentage of students at or above proficiency. What we're able to see with this graph are some cohort data trends. So for example, we could look at the 3rd graders in 2015-16 with 59.6% advanced proficient, then moving into 4th graders in 16-17, 66.9%, and then as 5th graders in 17-18, 68.9%. So just another way to look and interpret that data as students move throughout the system, or you could look at each grade level and see proficiency that way as well. Okay, on the next page, page 9 is our high school data. And so at the top there, you'll see our 9th and 10th grade Aspire reading data. Aspire is the state assessment that is given in the spring. And a nice jump there for 10th grade from 44% last year to 52% this year. Below that is our 11th grade ACT reading data. And you'll note there that we are above the state, but below the county average there. And we have some explicit plans related to ACT that we shared earlier this evening, incorporating our ACT standards and doing more studying around that data currently. On the next page, page 10, shows our composite for our ACT at a 21.6, well above the state average of 19.8. And as we break that down, our ELA score is a composite of reading and writing combined. But if we look at those separately, we're doing really strong in writing at a 7.0, which is comparable to the county. And again, reading just below our county average, but above the state.
So if you turn to page 11, at the top of that page, what you will find is a proficiency gap analysis. And what that does is it takes a look at how students without IEPs are performing in comparison to students with IEPs. And what you'll note is that in 2014-15, there was a 38.3% difference in the students with IEPs as opposed to those without in their proficiency. What you're going to notice is that the gap has increased. That is not something typically we would want to see. We would not want to see our students without IEPs. We wouldn't want to see a greater gap between how our students with IEPs are performing as opposed to those without. So what's important to notice is that overall, the state has trended down the last 3 years in their state assessment performance results just slightly, while Muskego, Norway has trended up in terms of their proficiency levels. And so our students without IEPs are trending up in their performance, while our students with IEPs are remaining more stable. And so clearly, we want to continue to look at reducing gaps, but the silver lining in this is that our students without IEPs are increasing their proficiency. And so now we're just going to need to really target and focus on getting our students without IEPs to continue to increase their proficiency going forward.
Okay, then on page 13.
Oh, yep, on page 13, you will see a prevalence rate of students with IEPs. What that means is this is the percentage overall of the students within our district that have IEPs. The state average is 13.8%. Muskego, Norway represents student population of kids with IEPs at 9.3%. We have about 5,000 students in our district, enrolled in our district. So 1 percentage point is equivalent to about 50 students. So in considering, you know, comparisons for ourselves as opposed to the state, we have about 200 less if the state had the same population as us, about 200 less students with IEPs within the Muskego, Norway school district if compared with the state if they were the same size.
The next 2 pages have some data related to advanced placement in college level classes. And related to our AP, we're seeing that the total number of AP students continues to increase. We did see a slight decline in the number of tests administered. We do not require students to take an AP test if they're enrolled in an AP class. So we did have a decline last year. And we have data related to the percentage of students who earned a 3 or better, which is 63% of our students. The county and state averages have not been released to date. Following that on page 14 is just a fun graph to show, since we implemented CAP credits at the high school, that we really expedited the availability of college credits to students who previously would have only had those had they enrolled in course or youth options, currently known as early college credit program. It's also a fun note that about 85% of our seniors graduate with college credit on a transcript.
All right, page 15, we have survey results for student engagement. We continue to use Suitor as a partner for our student engagement survey. It's on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being most engaged. Overall, you can see 3.82. Our elementary school has the strongest results at 4.30. That's natural. That happens all the way across the country, no matter what school district you're in. Our overall goal is a 4.30. So when you ask what are we doing to try to achieve that, we are implementing practices with our students, for example, student rounding, to try to get at the root cause of the results of our engagement so that we can increase it for students. I want to add one more thing. One of the things that we are going to also be instituting this year with our students, we are exploring the possibility of giving students a survey that actually gets down to the teacher level. Currently, students take a survey and we get an overall perception of engagement across an entire school. But to get it down to the teacher level so that teachers actually have that data in their hands around their impact on engagement, we believe is going to be extremely useful. That's some of our next steps.
Okay, page 9 just visualizes some of our redefining ready measures that we are monitoring. In the upper left-hand corner, just one thing to note, we're looking at the number or the percentage of students meeting a 95% attendance rate or higher.
Are you on 19?
What page?
Page 19. Page 19.
Oh, you said 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, page 19. So in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see students meeting 95% attendance or higher. The research related to attendance says that if students attend 90% of the time, they're creating the habits that would be successful for not just school but employability. But we have such a high attendance rate anyway that we wanted to monitor the percentage of students meeting 95% or higher. So you'll see elementary's at 76%, middle school 77, and high school 81. In the lower left-hand corner, just another fun fact to relate here. We have 2 courses at the high school that meet the state's financial literacy standards. One is called personal finance and the other is economics. And 81% of our students enroll in one or both of those classes. And 91% of our students are enrolled in a senior year math class. Why that's so notable is research would indicate that if students do not take a gap year in high school in math, they tend to place higher on their math placement test and need less remediation in math in college. So that's a really fun and interesting statistic.
So then on page 20, similar to what I just shared about our student engagement, we survey our parents annually 1 time per year. And you can see the results on page 20 of what the outcomes are. Total parents satisfaction across our system is a 4.11, again on a 5-point scale. Our overarching goal is to be at a 4.30. You don't see the data here, but a huge celebration for our system. Schools have been focused on what we would call an always behavior as far as positive outreach to parents. Making contact to parents, giving some type of positive kudos for something that the students are doing. We saw that those very intentional efforts grew that particular result with that particular question. So we know that our adult actions do get results. We just need to continue to put those actions in place to get the result that we want of 4.30.
So thank you, Jeff. On slide 23. Personalized learning. So we, in our last year 2017-18, had an additional 25 members participate in what is called Cohort number 4. That is with the partnership of the Institute, working by our side very closely with us. They're a great partner, based out of Pewaukee, which is again known as CISA 1. It's a kind of a separate organization within that organization that supports this work. We have created our constellation, which is our focal point for the system. And actually, just this year now, we have another 23 participating in cohort number 5. And that will take our participation over that century mark, which is a really big step for us. And at the same time, we also have Muskego Lakes Middle School looking to implement as a building-wide system with very specific work within personalization. So that means we'd have parallel access to personalization for all classrooms, not just those that decide to go through the cohort. We also have the grant process of the Leadership Design Academy. That's a grant process that allows us to continue to develop our vision around personalized learning. That started right in the middle of the 17-18 school year and continues into this year as well. Moving on to the next slide, 24. So we are actually making a shift this year. We're going to be moving away from one survey called Bright Bites from a company called Clarity. This was a survey that we found great use in and value in terms of the data, but their costs have continued to go up year after year. And so we've looked for an alternative, and we're going to be going with something called Project Speak Up to provide us with the data for 17-18. That survey just opened as of today. So it's a free survey. It's nationally normed. It has questions that we can ask to both parents and students and community members and administrators and students, and it's segmented kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th grade as an example, so there's more granular data that we'll be able to access. Some of the areas that we'll focus on: student technology proficiencies, student access, district and home. This is an area that we do want to make sure we're taking care of, where families that do not have reliable internet access at home, and then as well as staff technology access and integration. So the data will be forthcoming to wrap out the year for 17-18.
All right, bottom half of page 28, a huge celebration for our system. Whoop, whoop. That's for you, Mr. Irvine.
Thank you.
So we've been named a top workplace for the second year in a row. A third-party company actually sends a survey out on behalf of the district. We don't control that, instead that a private company does. And we survey all segments of our workforce. Through their particular responses, we are compared against other private public companies in the greater Milwaukee area that span all the way from just north of the Illinois border all the way up to Sheboygan. And as I said, a huge celebration for our system, second year in a row. Besides that, we had received a special recognition of the 150 companies that were named top workplaces. We were ranked #1 for support of new ideas. When you take a look at where we ranked as far as large companies in 2017, we were #7, and this past year we were #6. So we look forward to continuing to grow and get a third year in a row as being named a top workplace. Page 29, one of the pieces that probably we can attribute to being named a top workplace is a level of engagement that our staff feel across our entire system. So again, this survey is put out by Studer, and this particular past spring, we're at a 4.23 on a 5-point scale, which ranked us at the 90th percentile. One of the things that we have put in place, and you've heard me talk about this before, or us talk about this before, just the leadership tactics that we've put in place. For example, rounding with our employees to learn more about their experiences. Those particular tactics have helped us really increase the engagement of our entire staff workforce. And then when we put it all together, let's take a look at page 31. The resulting impact of our staff engagement has been extremely high retention. So on those particular graphs, you see 3 different workforce segments: our support staff, our teachers, and our administrators. A goal line of 90%, that's what we aim to retain each one of those particular workforce segments. A huge celebration in that 99% of our teachers are retained. This past year, we lost 1 to a resignation, which again is pretty phenomenal. When you take a look at comparing that result, retention of our teachers, 99%, regionally within Waukesha County, it averages 91%. So we are far above and beyond where other Waukesha County school districts are.
All right, we'll take a cruise down to page number 34 and talk about workers' compensation. So 5 years ago, our premium was over $300,000, and we were on the cusp of being put into the state pool for insurance, which I hear is like insurance purgatory. So we started our strategy to work our way out of that. And the way workers' compensation works is we're paying premium this year, but based on this graph, we're actually looking back those 3 prior years. So you kind of got to wait for things to fall off before your rates drop. So we've seen a steady decrease in not only employee injuries, but the severity of injuries. And we ask ourselves, is that lucky or leading? Is it just happening? And I guess I'll give an instance. A couple weeks ago, we had an employee get injured, and what we do when someone gets injured is we actually go in and do an investigation. We meet with the employee, we implement changes, and we ask other folks about if they've seen or witnessed anything. And so just growing a culture of caring about each other and setting that message out to the district constantly. So our mod, insurance mod, if you're 1, you're average. If you're 1.46 like we were really bad. So right now we're at 0.72, which is good, and 0.60 is as good as we could get. So we're getting very close to great. So I wanted to share that. Then scrolling down to page 41. So Jeff had talked a little bit about the parent survey that we send out. One of the questions on that survey is asking parents, I believe that my child is provided a safe learning environment. We've done a lot over the course of the last 5 years to increase safety and make sure we're communicating that out. One of the things that we're doing this year is a little differently is being a little more strategic with our school resource officers. So today, for example, we had a meeting at Lakeview and meeting with the principal and the SRO and talking about strategic actions that we can impact parents and students and teachers all at the same time and grow that perception. So One of the ideas we had is having them come during traffic times, so they're meeting and greeting parents, maybe even making announcements in the morning and having a Dylan's in the building today morning so that their students are aware and can come talk to him if they feel the need. So those are some things that we're doing with goal setting. So with each school, we're setting goals around how staff feel, how students feel, and how parents feel related to school safety.
And I will wrap us up by taking us to page 43, and actually we'll start at the bottom of page 43. What's really important to us every year when we go through our budgeting process is to ensure that we're looking at our resources and we're putting them in the places that matter most. And we do that through our evidence-based budgeting process, and really in alignment with a zero-based budgeting process where we're looking at where should we really be allocating our resources. And so what this graph shows, not as important as compared to the state, but just in general, that the cost per student that we have, you can see where we focus most of our money, and that is on the instructional costs. So those are the direct costs in the classroom that really impact students. The pupil services costs are less, and then administrative and operations costs. Those are a little bit higher because those costs include food service and transportation, but again, directly related to students. So again, showing that as we are going through a budget process, we continue to focus our dollars in the classroom where they matter most. And then finally, right above that, looking at our property tax rate and levy. So as we continue to ensure that we're providing programming for our students and creating great work environments for our staff, we're also being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. And so we continue to work really hard with the board to ensure that our property tax rate remains 0 or below. And so you can see this will actually be, as we go, 2017-18 was our 7th year that the property tax levy decreased, and we are anticipating that again for 2018-19. So just great opportunities for us to focus our resources and really be responsible to our entire school community.
Any questions for any of them? The fast facts, as I indicated, is also attached, and so some of the specific graphs that they kind of highlighted are in here, sort of in a different format, just highlighting top 11 items and having the banners down below with some of the awards that were granted to the district over the last year or so. So, proud of the achievements, and we know that we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of work ahead of us, and so some of the conversation earlier in the committee of the whole was about what that work will look like, and also then through our closed session conversation around our dates evaluation too will kind of highlight those aspects as well. So the second item is the school day adjustments. And Jeff, you're going to lead us in that conversation.
You bet. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. So about a year ago, the district calendar committee began to construct our calendar for this particular year. One of the things that we started to take a look at was just the number of minutes that our student day currently has. And we started to collect data from surrounding districts to compare. So where is Muskego, Norway in comparison to Waukesha County districts? Again, with the ultimate outcome, creating a calendar that most positively increases student outcomes. At about that same time, Mr. Irvine, Muskego High School principal, began to talk about, well, if we added time, perhaps 15 to 20 minutes, there might be a great opportunity for us to explore adding an advisory period. In fact, it would be a perfect opportunity for the high school to be able to do that. But when we started to dig a little bit deeper into the number of minutes per day and exploring what opportunities do exist, we found out some pretty important things that we felt we should share tonight as we explore adding time to our student day. So there is an attached presentation, and the very first slide that was presented last year was a student hours comparison. So you can see on that particular slide where Muskego, Norway falls with their student day in comparison to other Waukesha County school districts at elementary, middle school, and high school levels. So you see that we're the lowest of the Waukesha County districts, and that's the same across the entire region. We are the lowest in the entire southeast Wisconsin region.
How come all the schools aren't on there?
All the Waukesha County school districts,
Yeah.
we don't have, we didn't have some of them that reported out.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that we decided we needed to explore was if we add time to the student day, what's the resulting impact perhaps on budget and specifically transportation? Could we just add time to the high school to give an advisory period, or do we need to explore adding time to the middle school and the elementary school day? And what we found out in talking with the transportation consultant, if we added just time to the high school day, we would have to add bus routes, and it would probably be to the tune of over $1 million. So a pretty expensive option just to add time to the high school day. The consultant said the most budget neutral way to do this would be to add time across the entire board. So what he did is he reviewed the start and end times to our entire day. He analyzed our current bus routes and the scheduled pickup times and drop-off times, and then really provided a recommendation as he talked about the consequences of each one of the options. So those are the next slides that you'll see. One of the options that we looked at is, what if we just add 20 minutes on the back end of every level's day? You get an idea in red where the high school day would be, the middle school day ending at 3:25, and then the elementary day from 9:10 to 4:05. When we talked about this last year, one of the concerns that the board had was we don't want to end the day that late for our elementary students, but we at least wanted to present that to you as a potential option so that you could see what that would look like in practice if we added 20 minutes to the back of each level's day. The second option that you'll see is possibly adding 10 minutes on the front end of the day and 10 minutes on the back end of the day. You see what time high school would start. And you know, that's probably, quite honestly, pushing it to have a 7:15 start. Does that happen in the area? It's rare that that happens, that early of a start. But is it possible? Sure. And then you see the resulting impact that would have on the elementary day. We would start at 9 versus 9:10. We would get out before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And lastly, the third option, which is the one that the transportation consultant thought would be the most realistic and extremely doable, is that if we add 5 minutes on the front end of the middle school and high school day and 15 minutes on the back end of the middle school and high school day, you can see the hours. So adding 5 minutes doesn't necessarily have that same feel as adding 10 minutes to the start of the day for our high schoolers. And then what he also mentioned is, for the elementary, what we would do is either add 10 or 15 minutes on the front end of the elementary school day with 10 minutes on the back end of the elementary school day. There's more room for bus transportation and allowance of time. So the start of our elementary day actually could be pushed off as much as 15 minutes, and still the bus routes leaving the drop-off of the middle school, there would still be time for them to run their elementary routes and get students to school in time for either an 8:55 or a 9 o'clock start time. Again, adding 10 minutes at the back end of the day, so that end time would be 3:55. So I think it's important for us to really explore the why. As stated, there's a significant difference in the minutes for Muskego and Norway schools. When you start to do the math and look at what does 20 minutes a day really mean, well, that's 59 more hours a year, which is the equivalent of 8 additional school days in a year if we were to add 20 minutes. Okay? So 8 additional days. If we take a look at a student that's in our system from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, that's 767 more hours, which is the equivalent of 102 additional days of school if adding 20 minutes a day. So that might seem significant in your eyes. Again, I think it's important to note that just adding time to a day does not necessarily equate to making a difference for students. It's what you do with that time that's really, really important. So as we were looking at this from a systems perspective, what might be some of the possible outcomes, and why would we take a look at adding time at each one of these levels? A high school, and Mr. Irvine has talked about it, advisement period, that would really support connecting our students to the school and really connecting all of our students to the school. Middle school has been exploring a possible advisement period, but also ACP opportunities. Those are some of the things that they're doing right now, but believe that they can do even better with adding some additional time. And then elementary school, our curriculum, core subjects, taking a look at STEM opportunities, science and technology, engineering opportunities, to really expand on some of the science standards and explore that. As well as intervention. Can we reach more students that need intervention, and can that extra time really support that particular work? Not only the students that we might define as underperforming, but also those students who are our advanced learners. And then lastly, as we start to think about building out a calendar, what types of opportunities might it present itself for professional development for staff? Can we free up some additional time during the school year to add maybe another dark green when we take a look at our calendar, professional development day for our staff, realizing that those are well used throughout our system. So then we can't forget about our families. What might be a possible outcome for families? We know that changing start times does have an impact on families, but would families, might families benefit from reducing the amount of before school time that their students might have to be in a before school program? Maybe it would eliminate it altogether. Or perhaps adding time at the end of the day that gives that much more time for our parents to work up to maybe 3:55 in the afternoon, be released and be able to meet their students at the bus stop rather than having students go to before school or after school programs. So before we open it up for questions, just some of the next steps that we're exploring. We really want to work on transportation details. Are there really any costs? Can we really make this happen? Is it realistic? Is there any route impact? We don't believe that there will be. And then what would be those start and end times for each one of our levels? We want to meet with administrators to further articulate that why. We want to work with the calendar group, as I mentioned in the notes for this agenda item. We are in the midst of developing a calendar for 2019-20, and we want to really have a direction from the board as to where we should go with this as we start to look at opportunities with our calendar for next year. And then lastly, depending on the decision, we want to communicate to stakeholders if one approved. Any questions?
So the transportation, what other schools do we have to provide transportation for? I believe we do St. Leonard's. And what, are there any others? And how does that impact them?
Yep, that's one of the things that we do have to look into as we look at the routing information is the impact of the two private schools that we
What's the other one?
St. Paul's.
St. Paul's, thank you.
So that has to be incorporated into the actual, if we do this, how does that time affect their start and end times? So it's one of the follow-ups we will have for sure.
So would that change our total minute time to 440? Is that what I'm trying to get from?
For which
the student
particular?
hour comparison chart that you have up? You
So-
have Oconomowoc around the same time frame.
High school would be at 4:40, middle school at 4:40, and then elementary at 4:15. Yep.
And one of the things that I think would be kind of interesting to look at also for what to use that time for. I know that when we were at Country Meadows and we were trying to implement the above the line program and stuff, we would always try to fit that into other curricular activities to try to get that accomplished. And it would be kind of nice to actually have maybe some time set aside for those core things that each school just, each school is trying to implement within their school to create a culture of safety, learning, all that kind of core values that they're trying to put in, that would be kind of nice to put into that time frame. And then the other thing too that I feel like we eliminated years ago was I don't think she was a social worker, I think it was it was some sort of psychologist, whatever, that came in and would talk about, I think it was health, coping type stuff, and that would be kind of nice to maybe incorporate that back into the system that we used to have. Since I think there's a lot of adaptability with how kids are handling stress and anxiety and stuff, to try to incorporate that into that time frame too.
Thank you.
On these, so I guess I'm just out of curiosity, that you chose the 20, was there a reason you didn't choose 30? Just
For,
And-
I mean, additional time.
Yeah, and I guess it'd be kind of interesting to know, so New Berlin and others, so if you ever look at like what the comparison is, like the number of, I think New Berlin has their 6th, 7th, 8th grade are 1 hour periods per day, so there's like 7 of them, and then there's a lunch in that, so are we, because I always thought the greatest challenge of our middle school is the periods and the time we have to offer content. And so I don't know if there's a way to address that, or does this address that in the high school? I think if I had time, I'd kind of like to know what I'm going to measure that benefit for. And is 20 minutes, is it worth, and I'm not saying it is or not, but I guess, is it worth doing this for 20 and not 30? And then if you had 30, you get to create an extra period, possibly in the middle schools, where we can offer additional courses. Because I think over the time, over the last, since I've been on the board, we've gone through this periodically with, it seems the biggest constraint is the middle school, right? And I think a lot of the feedback I get is that it's more content. That my child doesn't have the opportunity to explore this content because there's no time to explore. It's not a result of anything wrong. It's just a result of we're contained within this period of time. So if we're going to increase time, I would think one of the first questions asked is going to be, so if we increase the school day, am I going to have more opportunity for my child to take additional courses that they may or may not be able to know? So I guess, I don't know how you answer that, if you do research on that. I'm not sure what the comparable is in New Berlin or the other Washoe County sites you offered. That'd be one of the questions I'd like to know. I'm glad you looked at it, because I think if it can bring a benefit to our district, I'm certainly open to it.
I like that thought, and I'm hoping they can still do it budget neutrally.
Yeah,
So
given the
it'd be interesting to see if
constraints,
they can come up with it,
yeah, and given the constraints we have trying to provide content, not so much maybe in the high school or the elementary school, but definitely in the middle school, I'm open to that. I'm certainly open to it. And then I don't know if you've ever looked at how do you tie success, or what would success look like if you had a 30 minutes or 20 minutes more? What would that look differently? How would we look differently as a result of doing that? I know we did those fast facts, which were really good, right? So you could almost market this, well, here's what it will look like by doing this, and almost a picturesque type, well, here's the way we are now, here's how we're gonna be, and here's what you can expect. But
I'm also curious with the amount of time in school, what is their time period between classes? Only reason why I ask that is because when I was at the high school getting my picture taken, there are so many kids with backpacks, it's crazy. But whoever walked me back to the pictures, which I think was your assistant, said that at her kid's school, they don't have backpacks. And so they literally have to go to the lockers and, you know, take whatever it is that they needed out or whatever, so that they're not carrying 60-pound backpacks. I don't know, I'm just curious what their, you know, time frame between classrooms is too.
Can I answer any of these yet? Is that okay?
There's a
Just,
microphone.
So as you
Yeah,
come,
comes
like,
up with-
Absolutely love the questions, especially the metrics around how do we measure success around this. That is something that really drove our entire why around why do we even want an advisement period. So it goes back to many of the things you'll see in our eye and the goal, whether it's student engagement, how do we support students and ensure really that every single kid is connected in our building. So having a homeroom concept where you would have a small group of students that you would connect with from the time they came in as freshmen. You would stay with that group of about 15 to 20 students and have that one-touch adult who is always with that group, to where once a week they're kind of connecting to follow up, seeing how they're doing, watching them go through that. Then you would have the students have the opportunity to be assigned to enrichment opportunities or support opportunities, or possibly even some club activities that could happen during that time. The other districts that we've watched who've utilized this have monitored their ACT growth. You can do ACT prep opportunities, you can do all sorts of ACP, career development, career enrichment. As you talk about some of the things, the different levels of experience that we're trying to increase the engagement of our students to connect them to real life work experiences, to help them match that internal passion with where does this line up in the world of work. There could be some great opportunities with that flexible time. So we already have some metrics in mind if we're able to create that. Is 20 minutes the right amount? I love that question. Most districts that have already made this move, they say you need to have at least 30 minutes to do it. 25 is too tight. If it gets to be longer than 35, 40 minutes, then sometimes it feels too long. What we would do is we would capture 2 minutes from every class period in addition to the 20 minutes to create our advisement period of about 32 minutes. So it could work for us. We certainly could explore adding additional time, but we're excited about what that flexibility could bring. In regards to the passing period, wouldn't change passing period time at all. The fitness challenge that we have is our students have a third floor science class, go down to the opposite end of the building is real. But oddly, our students don't want to use their lockers. We have this conversation all the time. They have lockers that they can use, whether it be for their jacket or backpacks. They absolutely cherish those passing minutes to connect with friends and be kids and blow off some steam in between going from class to class. So I don't know that it's a lack of time. Rarely, other than the rare instances where you were at the highest part of our building where you have to go to the other, but that's not common. Most students have plenty of time to get there and could stop if they wanted to, or at least once or twice, or at lunch. And if we did advisement period, tentatively our plan would be hours 1 and 2, then an advisement period, hours 3 and 4, then lunch. So you'd have a neat break in there too where you could drop it off if you wanted. So, great questions. I love the questions you're asking.
You might want to stay there, because I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If we push the high school day back by 15 minutes, how does that affect after-school activities, especially sports? Because some of them,
15 minutes later.
no, I mean, what about the other schools? I mean, you know, if they have a meet somewhere, yeah.
All the other schools finish at 3.
It's a very common question, and yeah, the reality is our end time is significantly earlier than most of our surrounding districts. So when we're going off to competitions, where our students are usually waiting around anyways. So wouldn't be an issue for our sports teams in any way.
So I do have questions that will impact that. So studies have shown teenagers are useless in the morning. I'm guessing for the most part, you guys would agree your kids, your students are probably much more productive and engaging second hour than they are first. We look at swapping any of these, like instead of having high school be the first one, look at middle school being the first one and second. I mean, it would be budget neutral from that. And you're doing the same hours, just plugging in different sections. We're gonna make change now. Because any of this, I'll tell you, any of this right now, we're gonna, I mean, it's how we deliver this is the key, because you're gonna have all kinds of feedback, wanted or unwanted, from parents on this, because this is dramatic. So if we're gonna look at dramatic feedback, yeah, we looked at everything.
Actually, if you're gonna switch, I'd almost think switching high school and elementary,
Well,
because as kids.
Yeah.
I know, it's a
I'm
big
just
jump.
saying any of it.
Yeah.
Are there any other districts that have it that way around here?
The late start.
Yeah.
Wisconsin has been very slow to adopt that. The American Medical Association has made some strong recommendations, and some states have pushed to try to adopt that. But it is truly a community challenge, I guess I would describe it, because it has always been that way. So there's some very real challenges to that. And that's where my passion is around the advisement period, but I appreciate the sensitivity around that. But I also want to be very respectful of what the community has spoken to around this. If there would be an openness to it, we certainly can look at and gather more information and facts to support how it would benefit our students. There are studies that come out all the time around late start times, how it impacts students' ability to learn, where it matches up. There was a study that was just on how it impacts ACT scores.
So that's one thing, and then the other thing is, we're talking about adding eight days of extra time essentially. Is it time that we start pushing through our association of getting rid of this archaic, we have to start at a certain date and just add 8 days onto the school year?
We do advocate, there is a policy for that.
We advocate sort of, but it's not, it's
Well,
not a hard point.
There's political reason for that.
Well,
yeah.
obviously, it's political, I mean, it's a law, all laws are political. I mean, but we, none of them have pushed hard for it.
There's, yeah.
And, well, no, don't give me there's a reason. There is a reason for it, but I mean, that reason is dying because, I'm sorry, and this is not you know, racist or ethnic thing. Kids don't work at the Dells anymore during the summer. These are all kids from Poland and Russia that come over here and are put up in dorms all summer, so this whole not starting until after Labor Day is foolish.
Well, the problem is Luther Olson's district runs into Wisconsin Dells, and they give him lots of support, and he is the head of he's the chairman of the education committee in the Senate, and it dies right there, doesn't even get a hearing every year. So, he's pushing
I
for
still
it.
don't know how that would help his situation, because just putting an additional 8 days onto the school year doesn't give that advisory
It still doesn't give the
time frame.
advisory time, but we're looking at straight hours. But what it would help would be any kids taking AP courses and everything else, because that AP test is taken so early. We haven't even, it's covering material our kids haven't even touched yet. You know, so there's a number of things that if we could shift the school year forward without even adding days, just shifting it forward, there's an academic benefit to that because of some of this testing is.
You have hundreds of kids and families who are already showing up every single day starting August 1st because of the start of sports and band and music and all sorts of programs. Agreed.
Have we ever gotten community feedback on the idea of adding time or switching the high
Flipping the
school,
start times.
high school and elementary? I think, you know, one of the things you brought up in here was the fact of, you know, reducing or getting rid of potential childcare before and after. There's quite a few families that depend on those older kids getting home to take care of younger kids as well, or being there. So I'd be curious of how they would, you know, adjust to that as well.
Which is part of the reason why I just said middle school and high school.
There's other creative ways to approach that too. You could create, we have 1,600 superstars over there with great job experience opportunities. If we created, building upon our childcare program and certifications, which we like work experiences, that if we could create an internal district system that could provide some of that. So there's creative ways we can continue to look at it if it's an option.
We do send out a survey every 2 years regarding conferences and calendar questions. We haven't specifically asked the question about, you know, the switching middle school and high school, primarily because it impacts us as far as competitions after school, and then how does that work with other school districts, but, you know, and, yeah. But as far as like late starts and early releases and things that impact the day, the school day on maybe a weekly basis or something like that, they have not been in favor of that. And in our most recent parent survey, which we'll bring that back, the results of that at the next board meeting, but there hasn't been any interest from parents to have that be part of like how we operate. Some school districts do that, where they just have a late start for professional development or an early release at the elementary level, and it's been not well received.
It wasn't well received here when we did it.
No, yeah. And we continue to survey to see, is there some readiness or an understanding about how that could be utilized, and it just hasn't been a big support. So I don't know, it's not really specifically, directly your question, but, you know, I'm just curious about that. Yeah.
So I guess going forward, it would be nice to have some, for me anyway, the high school, I guess it'd be interesting to see it. I can understand, and the feedback I get, I really get much feedback about there's not enough time or to take courses or are there any other plenty of options, you know, from online to, and kids can, there's the co-curricular, so, in the elementary school, I like this, I mean, that's fine, but it's the middle school that I'm, because I think at some point there's a scheduling discussion coming, and then there's gonna be, how do you do that, and, it would be interesting to me to see if we just went 30, and if we could add other periods, or what that would do, and then deal with the professional development and all that stuff too.
Maybe it would eliminate the A day and the B day, because that drives me nuts. Is it an A day, or, you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
It's like I can't keep it track. It's,
It just
That's
seems
how-
that that's the biggest constraint we have, is dealing with the time at that, right, six, at 7th and 8th, and I know you struggle with it, staff just consistently struggles with it, and, I mean, the job you do doing that is outstanding. I mean, our district has been very well, however, if there's a constraint that we can remove from that, and to better help you initiate, I mean, plans that you've been wanting to, that just can't because of this time constraint, that may, I mean, I'm certainly in support of that. I don't know if Rick or the rest of the board wants to look at this flipping, I'm not so sure I'm interested in that, but I'm
just
certainly
saying,
open to
we're
hearing
looking
that.
at stuff, we
Yeah.
look at everything, because I'll tell you right now, just from the conversation around the board, things I'm hearing, I don't know the sports any, I mean, I think majority probably support looking at some way of increasing the day, but what we do with it, you know, Chris's idea of, you know, trying to squeeze another minute or another period into middle school, well, I look at that as, well, okay, so we have another period, but we're reducing everything else, so is that, you know, 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, and, you know, it's, I think we as a board aren't even close to what, and if we can't do it, you're gonna have a rough time getting this through the community, or actually, we're gonna have a rough time getting it through the community, because we're the interface, so, well, I like all this, I think we're a little ways from, I think a lot of work needs to be done. I don't know how or where.
I do like the 30 over 20. I just don't feel like you get anything done in 20 minutes.
Well, again, it wouldn't be 20 minutes of advisory. It would be a 30-minute, it's adjusting the rest of the day in order to make that 30-minute uninterrupted time for that advisory period. We are bringing this forward, I mean, we took last year to kind of really review this with an advisory committee at the high school and the calendar committee, looking at the hours and the minutes and things. And really, this is a focus directed, and I understand it could be, you know, we could spend another couple of years looking at
I
everything.
don't know we need to do that, but.
But our
we need
intentions
2 more
were,
meetings.
yeah, our intentions were to bring back more information, more detail related to the additional minutes and the advisory, and what that 30 minutes or so could really, how that could impact students, and opportunities for experiential and all those things that we had talked about. And then really looking at that, driving, having the board approve something prior to a calendar being brought out for the 1920.
And when do you want to approve the calendar by?
Well, yeah, no, it would be, the
November
calendar would
19th.
come in November as a discussion,
Yeah.
and then approval in December. So we still are looking at, a couple of months, but it's just,
So we want to do something this drastic without some direct, like, I just would feel more comfortable getting some direct feedback, specifically, not just this buried into a survey online or in Infinite Campus, literally sent home or mailed each parent, fill this out, this is important, we want your input type thing. Because
of increasing the day.
yeah, this is,
I guess I kind of don't agree with that. I look at these hours that we're having kids in school, and we're so far at a deficit in hours from other school districts. My thought is 3 things. Increase our hours. Don't start the high school any earlier than 7:20, 7:15 at the earliest. I really hate to even see it go any earlier than it is already, to be honest with you. And number 3, allow our administration to fill that 30 hours a day with appropriate content. Because I think an extra minute is better than what we're doing now. An extra 20 is even better than a minute. And if we do 30, great. I do understand there's probably some constraints when you're talking about 4 PM or later for elementary and earlier than we're already starting the high school. Work with transportation if it's budget neutral, put a plan together, work with transportation to get those times. It looks like you need at least 40 minutes in between, maybe up to 50 between middle to elementary. Make it as tight as you can so people aren't showing up late, and make it happen. Because right here, I don't like what I see here.
I don't disagree with you, I just know how this community should change.
Well,
I agree with that.
to me, it's a positive change, and it may disrupt some people's schedule, but can you really argue that you don't want your kids in school 4 hours and 20 minutes instead of 485 or 385?
No,
Like every other district has? I don't think you can argue that.
You're talking about 7 people here that are rational and, care about their kids' education.
I'll put my perspective out there to anybody. We should be using the time that we have to get the extra 8 days a year. And the best way to use it is probably listen to the administrators as to, now if something really silly comes forward with what we're gonna use it for, we'll probably have an issue. But I don't think that's gonna happen.
And we'll certainly have a communication plan regarding how this gets rolled out, and parents would know well in advance, of making sure that they understand how that's gonna impact their family, and, but truthfully, we're taking them longer, and so they have.
The only thing that really concerns me is if we go any earlier with high school.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 minutes, but, I mean,
They can't go
really, the
7.
kids are already getting up prior to 6 o'clock in the morning. Some of them are to get to high school or to get what they have to get done before they get to high school. And I don't even get up that early to go to work.
I think you're both right. I think most parents would agree more time in school would be a good thing. And I think Rick's right, the fact that if this is a surprise, and it will be to a lot of people if you don't communicate it properly.
Yeah, but I don't think they're planning on surprising anyone.
Well, no.
We
but
have been
it's-
talking
we gotta
about
have
this
a
for
plan in place, is
like
all
a
I'm
year and a
saying.
half.
Yeah, it's not just gonna be a matter of, okay, we'll send out a few notices, we really are gonna have to communicate it very, very well. Or and give them the opportunities for feedback to the board members, or to the administration, or both. So.
Which that November thing scares me. So if you're gonna start
Have a
communicating,
discussion.
I mean, having it then is fine, but I want the information out there that people want to get feedback. They have that opportunity before we're ever.
Well, we have a parent IC message going out tomorrow, and if the board is comfortable with us saying that we're exploring adding between 20 and 30 minutes to a student day, we will put that in tomorrow and continue to provide that information, consistently now and through this conversation, and say the board will have discussions on this date and looking for approval by the end of the school year, end of the calendar year. We can start communicating when the board's comfortable. If the board's comfortable for us doing that,
I would start
Kelly,
communication out.
or maybe this is Julie's question, does this affect salaries also of the teachers and stuff? Or are they just salaried and it's just the lump? Okay.
There's no contract, so. A handbook, so.
But I think, if I'm not wrong, incorrect here, a lot of these school hours, we used to really work hard with the teachers to put together hours, times for this year, calendars, everything else was all part of the contract negotiations. And I got a feeling our hours probably got smaller as the union and their desires got larger and stronger. That's probably how we got here. So I think right now we have the opportunity to equal what our other comparables are in the county, and we should be back up to that level because we have the ability to do this.
Well, Jeff, aren't we close to the state minimum number of hours as it is?
We are at the high school, yeah. We are just squeaking it out.
I don't think anyone's here saying that we shouldn't find a way of increasing the hours, it's just a matter of how we do it.
So what about the end of the elementary day? Just a little guidance on that. Which we
I
explore.
do know there's many parents that did not want it to go past 4 o'clock. I don't know why 4 o'clock is this magic number, but I know that was always voiced as a concern.
Is that because of pickup times?
I don't know if it's work day, they're done at 3:30, I don't exactly know, but 4 o'clock was,
Parents at work would like it.
Later and better,
I
probably.
would think parents at work would like it.
Except those parents that run childcare. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know, because I don't know, the elementary, from someone who used pre-care and aftercare at times, I always adjust, I mean, the care was there to adjust to, so I never really, elementary, when I looked at this, I never thought the elementary, at least for me, would be an issue, and I never thought the high school would be an issue, just mainly, as Eric said, I don't even know if I want it starting earlier than it is now, mainly because in the sporting world, I mean, these kids are back at 10:30 at night at times after sporting events and invitationals, and
But I don't see
then
that, our day's not
and
gonna
then they
change
gotta
that.
be up though, you know.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that-
I just think he says any earlier than
Yeah.
start,
Oh,
now
so,
you're
So, yeah,
adding
so
on
I'm
even
not so sure I'd
more
wanna
to
change, I'd rather,
to that Tuesday
I
night
like adding it
basketball.
on the end, because I know a lot of coaches don't even practice until an hour after school's out, because
Yeah,
they
some
can't
doesn't start
get
till
out of
4.
work. Yeah, so I think the after works the best, at least from my perspective. But, so, it's just my thinking on those two. I think 30 is fine, I'd go 40 if you told me that you think we have to. Well, I mean,
I was gonna say that, yes.
I think the reason he's talking
Yeah,
about
I'm just-
elementary is because the later you start high school, the later you have to start elementary.
Got it.
Which means the later you're gonna let out elementary.
And I think
for
you're-
busing
I think you're busing here, I mean, you've got options to look at, but I would go with, if you could make this work and say, hey, hey, we can do this and we can do this, if it's only 10 more minutes, you've got the golden parachute here for people, well, then they probably want to hear that, then shorten it by 10 minutes just because you think you may get some community flack. You know, as Eric said, it's more time in school. And all this preparation, college and career ready, we don't want to be behind. And I have no problem with stuff that. I just would like to see just some ideas, I guess, or some,
Well, and I know with the
you
elementary
know, about
school, they
the
want
middle
it
school, right?
it
You know, that
before 9
scheduling.
o'clock.
I'm kind of
You know,
looking
because
at
most
that.
people work at 9. So it's unfortunate that we can't move up some more and some later, because starting the elementary school earlier would be best. But I know that they have to have the time for the busing.
If we kept high schools starting first, then middle school and elementary, transportation-wise, we could probably add 15 minutes on the front end.
Yeah, that would be good. That I think would be a plus for families, honestly.
Yeah, beyond that, it would be a push for transportation.
It seems like you can work it out, you've got some ideas already about front and back that you could just kind of make that work, but you could just look at that middle school scheduling, I'd like to know. So,
Can do that.
We have wait time right now in between middle and
Well, I was
elementary.
gonna say,
Yeah,
so it actually
so we
should
have
budget
some
positive.
flexibility.
That's a positive.
Yeah.
yeah, there's actually a good
Particularly with
40
these parking lots.
minutes and that is dead time, yeah, so.
Yeah. That would be good.
Yep,
I think their wiggle room, the reason for the wiggle room is you gotta remember, they're taking high school and middle school, and if there's an issue in there, that's why they have that wiggle room in there,
Yeah,
so.
especially with the seasons.
Yeah.
And
We
the
never
snow
cancel
word.
school, so.
Exactly.
Right, Kelly?
Dr. Thompson never cancels school.
No.
I gotta hear that all the time. Well, Dr. Thompson's never gonna cancel school.
We have boots.
So I just want to make sure that captured everything here. One of the things that came up is, so what are we realistically doing with that time? Whether it be 20 minutes or 30 minutes at each one of the respective levels. Take a look at middle school schedule, what opportunities might that allow us for. And again, be sensitive to, if we add 30 minutes, are we then scrunching periods down even more, like I think what I heard you say, Rick. So we'll look at that. I heard a question about what are we measuring as far as success? How do we know that adding this time is successful? So what are we measuring?
Eric just answered that, by the way. Because actually, what he says that is true, not in these words, but if you come forth and say, that this is what we need, or what we can do to remove all these top 10 constraints, and we can now provide this even better learning environment, well then that's it. Then that's how you measure it, by each of those items, just like, I can't quite said that way with this, but even that, so. But, so you're the ones that would have to, basically on your professional knowledge and wisdom, and you would tell us, hey, these are what's constraining us now with this extra 30 or 40 or 50 or boy, right? We can do all this, right? Yeah, well, I'm just saying, that's the deal, right? So.
Okay. I also heard when we explore these options, we really shouldn't be looking at starting in high school prior to 7:20 and have an end day for the elementary no later than 4 o'clock. Is that accurate? And then, Rick, I also heard you say something about maybe exploring some type of flip.
If you guys looked at it, you know, I'm not sure, I mean, studies are there.
I think I agree with that, Rick, but the only thing I don't agree with is with the high school, like you had stated, the expectation right now in our community is the older kids are home to get the younger kids off the bus. All we're gonna do is flip it.
Yeah.
We're just gonna flip it to where they're now, the expectation is they get them on the bus, but no one's home afterwards.
Well,
And
the high school kids, the way I talked about middle and high school, if you flip those, you still have the older one home for the elementary kids.
somewhat older, yeah, but not the oldest. But I think all we're doing there is we're just shuffling it and then making it harder for parents to start over and make a new plan.
Now's the time to look at it if you're gonna.
Didn't we talk about that before though, that I think the general idea was by most, not here, but in the state, was that if that is to happen, where high school was to start late, the state would have to say, everyone do it. So then it's equal across the board. Who wants to be the first one off the cliff saying, hey, we're the latest starting high school now, and, well, I mean, think about it, right? So I think that was because we had that.
I think you're taking my words as advocating for it, and it wasn't.
I mean, we had a
What
nice
I'm saying-
presentation,
what I'm-
right,
what
by
I'm-
that kid, and we all agreed, Rick.
But
We
what
all
I'm
agreed.
saying is have the answers. If we're looking at making these changes now, look at it and have the answers of why we're not doing it now.
I think you should get the state, I mean, what you said, you get the state to change that. I mean, that's the
Well,
first start of it,
Well,
yeah.
I'm curious
I
too.
mean, you're right on that.
Because I know Todd has come forward, you were like kind of the initiator for the high school. And I totally agree with having that home base with that one team. I love that concept. Have you really vetted this off to the middle school and the elementary school and what they're gonna do with that extra time? Because I know you have a good plan in place, but I just don't know.
The granular details, like the advisement period, the answer is no, but there are plenty of opportunities. There are.
And the discussion has been had there.
Yes.
It isn't like they're in a vacuum and they don't know anything about this. There is conversation, it's just solidifying it.
So just working with the group of teachers on the calendar committee, which are representative of every single level, they salivate at the idea of what we could do with that additional time.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else?
Thanks for that graphic.
Yeah, I was trying to picture Jeff Salvi.
Appreciate that.
Turn me off.
Thank you, Todd, for staying and helping with that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
All right.
Spurs
Okay.
are still up 1-0.
Oh, still one.
Packers.
Always a pleasure to have you here.
What inning are we in?
We are in the
6.
top of 6.
Packers are down by 1.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, the next item
Story of
is
the year.
the draft annual meeting booklet. Believe it or not, and you might recall that October 29th will be our annual meeting, and that will start our rotating board meetings at the high school. So, and then we're on the road for 5 board meetings after that one. So Judy.
This was here for your review. I did update it this afternoon. I had some of the term expiration dates incorrect, so I apologize for that for the board members. So that's been updated. Everything else within here, the strategic plan will be added, and then I'm just waiting on a few more pieces of information from some comparable districts for tax levy. But other than that, it's very similar to what you've seen from year to year. And if there were no other comments or questions about it, we would start getting it ready for production.
Love the dollar bill.
Dollar bill's there.
I'm really starting to love it too.
Yeah,
Actually, said
are you starting to?
It's becoming,
Okay.
it made it into the PowerPoint presentation. for the annual
It's
meeting,
really
so-
good. I like it.
One thing that's, we can celebrate, if you go to the debt information page on page 16, Lake Danube debt is gone.
Mm.
Yay.
Wow. Has it been 20 years?
It has. Yep.
That is so nice.
Big celebration.
Should go build another middle school. Oh, wait,
Wait.
existing.
No, let's wait a little bit.
So you want feedback on this tonight, or by,
I'm gonna send it in, knowing that there could be adjustments to Deb.
Okay.
And she usually just gets started, and then I can make adjustments, so through the end of the week is fine.
and when's the annual?
29th. So maybe Wednesday.
Maybe let them know by Thursday.
Okay, by Thursday.
Is that on Monday again?
Deb's-
Tuesday?
Just gotta picture out what was that?
What day of the week is that again? Is it a Monday or Tuesday?
The annual meeting?
Yeah.
Monday. Yep. Do I have it wrong in here?
No.
Okay.
Just verify.
All right, so we have a bit of a fiber update. This is, I think Brett, you actually asked this question about kind of that wider web, so Tony, you want to give us that update?
This is dedicated to you.
All right.
So,
How about you?
This is essentially coming around the most recent update on our current fiber installation, and then also what is consideration going forward. So in this case, I want to report the good news that we now have an active self-provisioned fiber optic network that is live in our system. Many thanks for your support in getting us here. It's been a big step for us and the system. We've officially deprovisioned all of the lines that we've been paying for to connect our inter-buildings, which is another great thing. That takes about a month to get processed. So those official requests have been put into Spectrum to disconnect those lines, and we are officially on our own network, which is great. So I know you can't see it, but I know you can feel it. It's around us. So, but I just want to take you quickly through this update because in this point is to kind of give you an idea of where we might be heading next. So if you notice the second page, getting connected to the highway, we are looking at what might come in terms of connecting us from our transport perspective. I've used this comparison, maybe ad nauseum, of a train track and the train. In this case, the transport would be our train tracks going out. So we have our internal network covered, and now talking about a connection that goes out to the web, we do pay for that connection. We're limited currently at 1 gigabyte per second, which does serve our district. And at the same time, we're looking at potential of having 2 gig, because we're getting to that threshold where we need to upgrade. That would double our costs, an amount of about $25,000 a year to make that extension out. Now, our alternatives are to potentially consider another future build, not nearly as extensive as what we've done. And I've got some maps here to show you what that would look like. So whether you're looking on at your computer or up at the screen at the front, what I'll be pointing out now is that our first map that we see is a connection that would run from our Mill Valley Elementary School to the New Berlin Fire Station, just up the road. You can see that that distance is 8,900 feet. We are in conversations with New Berlin City as well as school district and other entities related to it. And again, understanding that they are connected to a much larger network. So if we were to make this connection, we would be connected essentially out using their connections. So you can start to see where we're daisy chaining off others' connections. So there has to be agreements in place. We would certainly work on that, but just so you can tell, we have one potential connection that will run north across the highway to the New Berlin Fire Station. Another connection is, thanks to our new middle school location, we could connect to Countrydale Elementary, which is part of the Franklin Public School District, also engaging in conversations with them about those possibilities. Franklin is running a 10-mile fiber connection to Alverno College. And by doing so, connects them out to the direct web. So in this case, there's a whole dark fiber strand running along several corridors, east and west and north and south. So they're making a run north. We would have 1,300 feet to run to them. So not a very long distance. I don't know, maybe we could trench the hole ourselves. Never mind, we're not going to do that. But in this case, that would give us another opportunity to connect out. Either one would allow us to disconnect our costs and those speeds and increase those speeds by connecting to either the Countrydale Elementary and or the New Berlin Fire Station. Now, believe it or not, there's a reason to do both. But before I get all the way there, I want you to see this map. And maybe what I can do is zoom in a little bit to where we are. So, at the very bottom, we see that we're on the southwest corridor of kind of this loop. Up to the north, we have the Waukesha, which is kind of in blue and green. They have double and triple redundancies, and they're called what's called WeCan. Now, many of us know WeCan because that's an employment website that we use. This is different. I don't know why they called it WeCan, but it is a CAN, which means Community Area Network. That means community network entities connecting to one another, and there is, again, agreements with them. Now, the other lines that are going out to Wales and other places, those are in-the-ground networks currently, going all the way back down to Muskego. You notice here, circling the cursor, we're on that connection to New Berlin. And then back south, we of course have our network running all the way to Racine County. Heading east, we get our connection all the way to Countrydale Elementary, which again is a very small connection in the whole scheme of things. But you start to see this loop that is being made around kind of the metro area, potentially Waukesha County and Milwaukee County. And we could become a major corridor for that as well. More on that in just a second too. So this is that large map that shows all the in-ground networks. And by the way, compliments of MC&E, our previous partner on this work, is very much involved with all these other entities as well in terms of having knowledge of where these networks are. There's a lot of leased fiber in the ground that's probably not reflected on here. This is the networks that are owned by entities or leased as well. As an example, Elmbrook School District leases certain parts of their network to get connected to other entities. So, once again, this connection here we're looking at, or the one that goes to Countrydale. Big part of this, reducing costs. Well, I mentioned that before. We're going to have to increase our pipeline to accommodate speeds in the district for internet alone. If that goes up to 25,000, it's a big jump for us, but at the same time, it's an area of need. If we were to eliminate that altogether by running connections, we eliminate that cost altogether, and we can replace it by being a part of the WeCan, which is that community area network, which then allows us to connect to other entities as well. Once we're on fiber, we can then, again, be connected to other elements with fiber. So we're not limited to just connecting to the fire station and putting a server in the fire station, which wouldn't make sense. We could run it 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles into other districts. That might sound a little scary, so I won't get too far ahead of myself. But the membership of the WeCan is what we're considering, and I've had several meetings with the Waukesha WeCan to talk about what that access would look like. So the more members there are currently 9 member entities like City of Waukesha, WCTC, Carroll University, to name a few. Elmbrook, you get the idea. So our costs would be about $3,500 for the year to connect to that network. To put that in perspective, our current costs are going to be about $25,000. Future costs would be $3,500. And as more entities join, such as Franklin Schools, New Berlin, as an example, that cost would go even lower. So an opportunity to connect to a larger network for a reduced amount of money, and because we'd be connected there, we pay for internet services from Wisnet. We only get 1 gig because that's what our limitation is through our transport going out. If we connect to the WeCan, we can turn that up to whatever speeds we need. Essentially, we're paying for unlimited internet speeds within reason, and we would get those speeds as needed. Next step, increasing speeds. I talked about this a little bit. We do have limitations. We do keep a very close eye on our internet usage. Our average is still about 700 megabytes per second out of that 1 gig, but we have peaked. There are parts of the year that we get more internet usage than others, And in this case, we are reaching that limit. So we are going to have to make an upgrade sooner than later. Doesn't mean it has to be a permanent change. We can increase and decrease our speeds as needed. Also, while our current speeds aren't 10 gigs, we don't need 10 gigs of internet, we are thinking about what this network could mean for the future. Similar conversations. Another process is we do have disaster recovery, DR. It is off-site. It's at our high school. So they're not very far away from one another. And with our own network, it should be at roughly 10 miles or more in terms of distance to have the event of something catastrophic happens that our data is safe. We have many cloud-based platforms, so understandably, it's not like everything would be lost, but we do have local services that we want to make sure are a distance away from this school in the event of something extreme. Weather-related, fire, you name it. And offsite hosting, we could follow up with that as an option if we ever wanted to have a certain system. Many members of the weekend have data services being hosted at other locations within the CAN. Of course, agreements are always very specific about what that looks like. Last part is redundancy. This is the point that I was going to make. We have Franklin on one side, we have New Berlin and City of New Berlin on the other. And in this case, if we connected to both, if a line were to be cut from one angle, whether it be Alverno down to Countrydale Elementary, we would fail over to the connection going up to New Berlin. And vice versa, if something were to happen to the connection coming from Waukesha into New Berlin and that line were to be cut, we would have failover into Franklin. And so either way you look at it, we could redirect our services. If both those lines are cut, we're having a really bad day. I can't say I have a plan just yet for that, but in this case, it would provide the redundancy that we're looking for, which again, we would have, people would understand when we have an outage, but they aren't very patient. In fact, I think they're more patient when the power goes out than they are when the internet goes down. So it's an opportunity for us to gain redundancy, but also increase speeds at the same time. So the last part I will say is we could be the bridge. And that again is that southwest corridor that we are essentially helping other districts to connect as well. Because other entities that maybe have not buried their own fiber or maybe close to us could also be an opportunity to connect. Not districts I've talked to, but as an example, Washington Caldwell is just down the road from our Lake to Noon middle school. And so having other opportunities there for connection is another great opportunity for us. Once we're connected, then they can be disconnected too. Money savings for others. We're not looking at this as an opportunity to make money, more as an opportunity to save money and increase speeds. So those are the focal points for this. Sorry if I got too long-winded. I hope that was helpful as a planting the seed about future steps. Are there any questions?
I guess the big thing for me is what's the cost to connect to New Berlin and the cost to connect to Countrydale?
So they're going to give us some estimates. MC&E is going to do some of that work. Again, we're not investing in any engineering at this point. This would be just general conservative measures about what it would cost to connect to both sides. 1,300 feet. I mean, I'm not going to estimate for you and throw numbers on the table until I have more information. I can bring those back. But certainly those are all E-ratable. So 40% discount on that work, just like we had with our full projects. Our main project was 16 miles, and it was 800,000. So what we're really hoping is 8,900 feet and 1,300 feet are very much in our wheelhouse, particularly if we consider what, again, E-rate would look like on that discount. So wish I had more formal figures for you. As you understand, we're very early in the process of that evaluation.
So we'll bring you a follow-up as we
Sure.
get more information.
Yeah, once I get maybe some pricing, that would be another helpful update. How's that sound? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony? All right, district sale, rummage, rummage, rummage.
And off those goods. We are having a district sale, so Muskego Lakes created pretty much all new furniture for that facility, and a lot of Mill Valley had all new furniture, so any excess or leftover was distributed amongst the schools, so people traded out some of their older furniture, and that all landed at Muskego Elementary, so we'll be having a sale there on October 25th, 8 to 12:30. And we're not doing any pre-sale. We've been contacted a lot just through Facebook and other things about people looking to come purchase stuff. We did put all the private schools on notice well before posting this, and surprisingly I didn't receive any interest back. But after we do that, we will then post everything online, which we're hoping most of it sells at the sale. And if it doesn't sell online, then we could work to donate it to anybody that would be interested. So that'll be the process.
I can forward you, there is a person at a private school that does So they do CCD.
Sure.
I'll forward that to you.
Any questions? Let's see, the last item I have here is the WASB Regional 11 meeting, and Brett did send everybody an email today to remind people to sign up. Dara can do that for you on your behalf. And then just on that note, again, a public thank you for your service as board members to our district and in our community. So little gift, a token of our appreciation for the time that you spend with us, not only here, but communicating with our community and the people that you interact with, and being at the events and just showing your support and having great dialogue like we did tonight about really important things. So thank you for your partnership, and we really appreciate your service.
Ms. Kate.
Kate is our new communications director, our communications
Specialist.
specialist, thank you, person.
And banana roll maker.
Please tell her thank you.
And that ends the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On to other reports. President's report, I was just going to mention about the WASB region meeting, but it's already been talked about. So that's the end of my report. Any other board member reports? There are no committee reports. Moving on to resolution action items, 7A, early college credit program requests.
Motion to approve early college credit request for semester 2 of the 2018-19 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Questions, comments, snide remarks? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to 7B, snow plowing contract.
Motion to approve a contract with Merit Asphalt for snow plowing for the 2018-19 school year per the terms presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7C, gifts, grants, and requests.
Motion to accept with thanks gifts as noted below. District schools, the Muskego Food Pantry, in cooperation with other agencies, gathered school supplies through many generous donations. School supplies, estimated value $1,425. School supplies were distributed to each school, portioned on their respective enrollments for students in need of assistance. Muskego High School, Milwaukee NARI, National Association of the Remodeling Industry, $5,000 for Muskego High School Construction Education Program.
So moved.
Questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to discussion items, 8A, 2018-19 budget, third Friday people count.
So the people count happened, very exciting. When all numbers came in and we reconciled everything, we were down by 42 FTEs. Again, an FTE is not just one student. We have to convert 4K, and 4K is only a 0.6 FTE. So when we looked at our enrollment in total, and we ran scenarios through the budget process, we looked at increasing up to 50 and decreasing down to 50, so it did fall within our guidelines. So we are still seeing a reduction in the tax levy. And actually, because of the number of reductions, we get a little bit more money from the state to help offset that decline, so it actually helped our budget slightly. So that's kind of where we ended up with Third Friday, and you'll see that as it fits into the budget when we report out the final budget on October 29th.
Any questions?
All right, thank you. Item 8B, Neola policy and AG revisions.
All right, so lovely time of year again. Every 6 months or so, we have a compilation of policies that and AGs that Neola brings forward for our consideration, and they make recommendations, and some are specific to statutes that have changed or practices, and some are just really purely just a few language changes. So they're here for you. We just request that if you have questions, let us know ahead of time, and we're happy to, provide you with those answers. They'll be coming back to the board 2 additional times for your consideration. The next time will be action, and then the following will be in consent agenda. The AG that we're kind of bringing forward for a highlight is student alcohol and other drug abuse. And it's just a request for the board to consider using the word shall in the AG, which is the administrative guideline. It's not in the policy, because, and replace it with may. It's not a statutory requirement that we bring all distribution or sales to the board for a recommendation for expulsion. And so this would allow us to make administrative decisions regarding that and bring forward the ones that we believe should, require board kind of weigh in regarding the expulsion, or or that we take care of those things as we do many student behavior incidences that occur in our system. So it's our request, and if the board is comfortable with that, then we would request the board considering today to actually move forward with that as an action item.
Questions, comments, thoughts? Something besides blank stares? Does anyone have any objection to the proposed change to the student alcohol and other drug abuse policy?
Can we bring it back one more time?
We could. Is there a reason you want it back one more time?
Because I didn't get to look at the policy yet.
Is there a reason why there isn't a description of what has changed on that one? Or is that just,
I'm sorry. If you,
maybe it's just because there's just one under that topic?
yeah, there's just one. So if you click on that, and it'll take you to the actual policy, right?
Yeah.
And that word is the only thing changed.
Oh, okay.
That's the only thing changed in that policy. So this policy is actually not a Neola policy. This is a Muskego, Norway policy.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be very clear about what first violations would look like, what would we do, so that there's very consistent action. And again, this is an AG, this is us, this is administrators making the determination about what happens, and this is our guidance. So,
So all this is changing is, right now for sale or distribution of controlled substance, you have to bring it to us for expulsion. So if we say may, you may recommend it doesn't come to us, does the parent still have an avenue to bring it to us?
yes, they can always come forward to the board with regard to a student issue if we're not, if they feel that administration, as long as they go.
They have an avenue, but
Yes.
it's not an automatic, yes.
I'm
So
sorry?
it
They have an avenue, but it's not an automatic.
They can, like, what is it called, like when you
Appeal,
appeal it?
yeah.
Yes, they can appeal it.
How does that work? Can you walk me?
Sure, so that's like, what would happen is, a student situation would arise, and then the administration would come around and talk about what's the best approach to support the student. And there's a variety of things that we have on the table that we can consider. We can consider withdrawal agreements, we can consider an abeyance of an expulsion. These are things that, we've talked about, with different students. But this would allow us to have all of those avenues on the table and move forward with something without having to automatically go to the board for expulsion. We could say, we're going to handle it in this way because we know it's important for these reasons to handle a particular situation in this way. And we know that, and we take into consideration what we know about the value of our community, and making sure that we're keeping the other 1,700 students at the high school or wherever this is occurring safe. And so we make those decisions based on all those factors.
So let's say hypothetically you determine that you're going to expel a student on your own.
They
We couldn't
can't,
do that.
they can't do that.
Oh, so you're just talking about all the other.
Yes. You couldn't expel a student without the school
The
board.
board's the only one
Yeah.
that expels, so.
So this is just everything up to, prior to the expulsion.
Yes.
So say for instance, a student was distributing and for a number of factors, and I'm not gonna choose the right words here, it's gonna sound bad, but it wasn't as serious as some could be, or there was underlying other issues with that student that don't fall into, like Carrie's realm, where it falls into a issue because of their IEP or something like that. Common sense would sometimes dictate of handling this differently than an outright expulsion. Maybe putting that child into a different learning environment and holding the expulsion hearing as an abeyance over them, saying, okay, we have an option, you can go to the board as an expulsion, or we can move you into this other learning environment, being, you know, a different school or different environment totally, or however, as an alternative. And if you don't complete that, well, then we can bring you back as an expulsion. You know, it's a signed agreement. So it just gives the board, the administration much more flexibility than they have now, because the word shall is there. As a little bit of history, that shall was in there purposely, but that was a different board, and it was a different administration at the time. The level of trust probably wasn't quite there at that time, but it was specifically made to shall, you know, versus may. I think things have changed since then, but you know, that's the history behind it, at least.
We have lots more options now, you know, in front of us to.
Has there been any of the expulsions due to this policy? I mean, is this coming up because the administration has not supported the expulsion hearings that we've heard? I mean, is there a case, and you don't have to cite the specific case, I'm just saying, is there one that you said, hey, if I would have had this in here, I wouldn't have brought it to you for expulsion? Because I guess that's why I'm wondering why it's coming up.
Whenever we bring something forward to the board and there's an option that we would want the board to consider that might be, you know, either a early readmittance or, you know, those kinds of things, that's, you know, that's kind of what we do to support it. Yeah, it's supported that way. We just believe that given the approach that we've taken with some students who haven't gotten to the point of distribution or selling, they've been effective in having an abeyance created, you know, that it's essentially saying, we're going to create this learning opportunity for you, and we're going to put the expulsion in an abeyance so that you can move forward with your education in this kind of venue. But however, if you don't abide by it, we're going to come to expulsion. And those haven't had to come to the board. So that's kind of the reverse of what you're asking about. We've been able to be successful in drawing up agreements for students and getting them and getting, you know, essentially the district what we need. And it hasn't had to come back to the board for expulsion. They've been successful, those agreements.
So, go ahead. Well, so by doing this, I don't know, I mean, right now, if you brought something before us for expulsion, we can always just change it to a suspension.
Correct.
Yeah, we have.
And I don't, here we're being, no, I'm not so sure that I'm comfortable. I generally prefer, if I see dealing, I want it before me. I want to scare the crap out of the kid. I do. Rather than using. If someone's actually dealing, oh, there's more people, more contacts, more stuff going on here. And so, you know, I saw that and I was like, I don't know. I've still been tossing up on that.
Just clarification. I'm not trying to belittle any part of it, but there's a difference between kid dealing and selling it, or making.
I'm going by state statute here.
I understand that. I understand that.
If they're caught and.
Well, and I understand that. So I'm trying not to, like I said, I'm trying not to make it sound like it's lesser, but.
No, I know. I don't know if that's discretion I want to, I think it's work.
Don't all authorities get reviewed every 3 years?
Well, and that's another option. If, you know, as far as this particular administrative guideline. We could try it for a year,
Right.
and we can bring it back to the board and say, here are some of the situations that we didn't bring forward, this is how we dealt with it, and it worked well. Or it didn't work well, or, you know, we'll be objective about it. But we can certainly, that's a great point, we could do that in 6 months, if the board would be open to trying this from that standpoint.
We might not have any instances in 6 months.
Right, so we could do it.
I really don't see any downside to this except for one. The administration decision could be not to move forward with an expulsion hearing. And then it comes back because of another incident or a issue that occurs.
With the agreement.
And then the community says, well, why wasn't something done with this kid in the first place? Well, they're not gonna be asking us, they're gonna be asking you. So the odds of that happening are probably slim to none. But if it did happen, it probably would be a pretty big matzo ball there.
To be
Throughout
honest,
there.
I'd rather have it say shall come to the board for expulsion or other disciplinary action. At least we have the option of saying, yeah, this was extenuating.
Well, we always have that. I mean, either it's,
I know.
I mean, either we're convening a meeting for an expulsion and change it.
But according to this, if we follow this, the administration has to recommend expulsion.
No. The
Should we
administration
recommend
has to
board
bring
for
it
expulsion?
forward, and we've had that, where they.
No, I mean, that gives us the option, but it also gives them the option to recommend something else.
They have that now.
No, according to this,
They do. I mean, we've gone through this already.
I mean, you know.
No, they can make they can make a recommendation of non-expulsion.
Well, I think
We've
what
had that.
happens is they come before with a recommendation for expulsion, we just amend it, right?
Yeah.
Based on
We
what,
always have
after
that option, yeah.
after the tribunal and the hearing and all that stuff, we just, right, so.
But they have,
But
I mean,
if
they
you
have
want-
an option of recommending whatever they want to recommend.
I don't know,
I'd feel more comfortable doing that.
I would prefer, I mean, I would think the district would, well, I don't, I would prefer to have this check to, I mean, I'm not, it's discretion that I think the district administration may wish they didn't have.
But again, any situation that we feel there is any sort of risk that it won't go well, we'll come to the board. You know, we'll weigh that out and determine. I think there are situations where, you know, will we be able to handle that decision and write up an agreement that would be very supportive of both the district and of the student.
I have no doubt that you would, but as Rick said, boards change and administrations change.
That's why I think if we did a temporary, like just do a trial or I think what we're trying to get at, what you're maybe trying to propose is that we give them a little trust and advise, like, that she can have a little bit of this, I don't wanna say power, because that's not a good word to use, but.
It's authority.
Yeah, of being able to make some decisions on her own, than coming to us for
I personally think she has
it's a trust
that.
thing, and I think I do trust the administration's.
I think she has it, and I trust her completely. However, as a board member, I feel this rises to a point where I want to see it. I think the community would want me to. So, and that's it. So I believe that it's still their discretion. Dr. Thompson can bring it forth, and during the hearing, we can adjust it. However, I think as a member of the school board, I think this rises to a point where the community would want me to see it.
But
Well, I mean,
do understand that this is only for drugs. We're not talking about
Right.
for other stuff, correct?
Well, it's just
I mean,
here,
like,
well, the state's, right.
Threat to security, any of that stuff.
I think it just says for the state statute, how it would define dealing, right? Or like.
Distribution.
Or distribution. I think, that's just my opinion. I mean.
And again, it isn't governed by state law from the standpoint that state law doesn't require us to bring this forward to the board. And Neola doesn't have a policy like this that would require other districts to. This is completely
Yeah.
Muskego, Norway.
So at some
grown.
point in time, our school board decided that they wanted all these.
Well, this is a
in
leftover
2004.
from when we moved to Neola. We
Right.
just said, we really like that first and second violations,
Okay.
you know, that made sense to us. We liked, and to be honest with you, yeah, so.
I'm okay with moving forward with it.
I
If it's
mean,
not-
we
if
gotta,
it's
we
not-
gotta figure too that everyone can always bring it back to us as an appeal, right?
Well,
If
they
the
wouldn't
parents
appeal
aren't
it because it would be less of a.
Yeah, they're gonna get less
They're
from
gonna
them
get
than
less
they would
of
from
a
the risk of,
consequence.
their appeal would be to come back to us and ask to be expelled.
Oh, that's
Yeah, exactly.
So then,
My recommendation is, put some time period on it and try it, but,
I just want to be clear. My vote will have nothing to do with my trust. It's simply how I feel my obligation is to this level, to the community, so.
Well, we try a year. Just as long as you track what those are in a year so that we get a report back as to, if we try it for a year.
Absolutely open to whatever the board would feel comfortable with, and this is just an opportunity to kind of get things going for the students and for our system.
or you can do it for the school year.
all right, so just one thing here. You can vote no, and that's fine. You can let us at least take action on it tonight, because all it takes is
Yes.
one person to not take it, okay. So if one person votes against taking immediate action, it kills it till the next meeting.
Right.
They're asking
That's
for,
power.
that is.
That would be power.
Yeah.
That would be
I'm gonna
power.
throw on one more caveat there, that when we discuss it in a year, can we have a closed session to go over any incidences that happened during that year time frame, so we have an idea? Maybe we might wanna modify it.
Well, does it
instead
need
of
to be a closed, can't you
Yeah.
just protect the student and say student A did this?
Can we do that in an
Sure,
open session?
yeah. Yeah, that you can, as long as you're not giving too specifics that they can be identified.
Okay.
Because I think it's a
That's not
discussion
saying
that if
I'm
you can
looking for
have,
it,
and I won't be
yeah,
here,
fine.
but I mean, it's a discussion that I think if you can have in public, you should have, on that, especially something like that. So,
Okay, I would be good with it if we can do it in open session. I just would like the data. We did, this was the circumstances behind why we didn't, and maybe we might want to modify it back, keep it, or.
Yeah, if you feel
make some
comfortable
more.
with what happened or not, or ask
How many
questions.
expulsion hearings do you typically have in a year?
There is no.
There isn't any.
I've gone through over a year probably without having them, and then, we've got a rational, at times, so. There's no rhyme or reason. I mean, Dara's probably the expert on it, she's got to call around and say she's going to
It
Yeah.
really feels like there's a million.
The first years I was here, there was,
But they go up and down, there's, there's no
So-
normal.
Are you looking for a motion to bring this forward?
yes, I'll be looking for a motion to take immediate action. So could somebody make that, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second? This is just a vote to move it forward for a vote. Second. All right. So all those in favor of taking immediate action, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Now the actual vote on the Neola policy and AG revisions. Can I get a motion to approve that?
So,
Could I have a second?
Can I ask a question before I second? Just so I know what I'm seconding?
No, I'll second it, and then you can, we can go to discussion, and then
How do we modify it to the 1 year after the second?
we're just asking for, we can, do you want to put a sunset on it, or do you want to just have it reflected in the minutes that it's going to come back in a year for review? Do you want to
I'll
put
just
a
bring
motion?
it back.
Yeah, well, then we bring it back in a year for review
I
as we
would,
discussed.
or you could just set that in the
So,
school
so
year.
if you want to if you want that in the motion, just make a motion to amend and state that, and then somebody else will second it.
All right, so I'll make a motion to amend that we bring it back at the end of the school year to review.
At the end of this school year? Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, we're just voting on the motion to amend right now. All those in favor of the motion, the motion, not the emotion, the motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so then the other, if as you work your way through any of these policies and AGs and you have questions or thoughts about any other ones, feel free to contact any one of us. You can start with me so I can kind of guide you in the right direction. Otherwise, they'll be coming back on October 29th.
No, we just approved them
Oh, you approved them all?
all. Yes.
Oh, you just did that, plus you went to action. Oh, you did it all?
We did it all.
Okay,
So
well,
they're not coming back.
okay.
Some don't, but
They
just-
will be coming back. They'll be coming back on, for consent.
Yes.
And consent. We have to go
Yeah,
through it twice,
true.
two approvals.
Yes.
Okay.
Does it
Thank
say
you.
within the, I guess I should just open it up, but do each policy have different timeframes, or are they all just automatically done every 3 years and it's the set that's being done?
No, they are
Or they go
typically
through all of
reviewed,
them?
no, they're not all of them. They
They're
typically
the same.
review based on statutory changes or procedural changes, or they just are old and we need to kind of come back to them, yeah.
I'm just familiar with them in my world, and it's every 3 years, so that's why I was curious if it was an annual thing.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to discussion item 8C, curriculum planning committee recommendations. Who's leading this?
All right, I'll take this one. So the curriculum planning committee met a couple of times in September to review course proposals and modifications. There's 2 documents attached here. One is our recommendation to the board, and the second is committee notes from those 2 meetings. So I'll just give you a brief summary of what's being proposed. If you recall, last year, literacy went through a review process, and in May, when we shared what the high school was proposing, we had mentioned that they were going to be coming forward with a English 12 proposal. So through that review, they recommended combining courses at the senior level to create a year-long experience for students. They're proposing to combine advanced comp with world and British literature, which would create the year-long option. It would allow for students to have access to the very popular college essay unit, which is always the first unit of the year, as well as spreading reading and writing out throughout the whole year rather than having a concentrated effort by semester that are preparing students for that first year of college. Through that process, they would be purchasing a few new texts totaling $31.20 and curriculum time to align this course with standards and to create assessments, etc.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure can.
And it really doesn't have anything to do with what they're putting together, but is there any thought, has there ever been a thought about having advanced comp, at least the college essay unit, the second semester of junior year? Maybe like right at the end. Because many students are preparing that in August to get it in September 1st, when most colleges open up. And especially students that might be borderline want to get those applications and essays in on day 1, so that they're being looked at immediately and not in October when they've already filled some of their spots.
That was actually discussed. Junior year has a very heavy focus on ACT preparation, so the writing that they're doing in junior level English is better in line in preparing students for the ACT.
When is the junior ACT given?
Usually it's like the first week in March.
Okay. So, I mean, is there an opportunity for the college essay to come after the ACT is taken? I mean, something to think about.
They did discuss it. One of the things that they landed on was finishing junior year with an activity that would help students better narrow where they wanted to go to school, and then start to tap into the experiences that they had throughout high school that they may then turn into a written piece their senior year. But because of their focus, they felt like it was better suited the first semester of their senior year.
I guess I'm trying to figure this out because advanced comp was a 0.5 and British Lit was a 0.5. So they could take it year round if they wanted to.
And
but
most students were.
Really? Because I know so many students that do the AP comp but do not do the British. So that's why I'm surprised that you want to combine the two, because I think you're going to cause kids not to sign up for the advanced comp.
Yep.
I have 2 in my household that would not do the British. You know, they wanted to just take the, you know, composition class for the, you know, applying for colleges and stuff like that, but had no desire to want to do the British Lit. So I'm just.
We did pull 3 years of data, and of the students who take advanced comp, and I can pull the exact data, I don't have it in front of me right now, but overwhelmingly, the majority of them took either World or Brit Lit, and then conversely, the students who took World or Brit Lit, the majority of them took advanced comp. So over the course of 3 years, each year, it was like around 8% of students who in that combination would have been affected because they took something else, like perhaps they took advanced comp and an art of film. And so they would be impacted, but it was like about 7 or 8% of the total population of the students who took those classes, and that was over 3 years.
I guess I have the 7 or 8% in my house. I mean, to me, it's do you like literature or do you like science and math? That, you know, like I think you're, you know, and that was one of the nice parts of having it being a 0.5 is that you didn't have to take it for the full year.
And then something else to note is that other options available to students would be AP Lit, AP Lang, Art of Film, CAP, or Transcripted Credit Communications, Individualized Reading, and Applied Count. Any other questions on the English 12 request? The second one then is modifying our current astronomy class to be Earth, Space, Science. And so it would take our current astronomy curriculum and add elements of earth science to that, creating a more global earth, space, science class. The benefit to doing this is that, number one, the class was beginning to be obsolete, where most students taking the class weren't taking it because they liked astronomy. They were taking it because they maybe needed to pick up like a 0.5 credit in science. So we're trying to open it up to be more relevant for students. But for those students who do need to pick up an extra credit in science, by aligning it to the Earth Space Science standards, students could take a semester of this class and then back it up with a second Earth Space Science class offered through WBS, earning them a full year of science should they need it or be interested. Any questions on that one?
So the astronomy class that you have is not the one that they have to buy, because right now I think it's more online than it is classroom. Because my son is taking that one right now. So
Yes,
it's
this
online.
year. Yeah, this
Okay.
year.
Okay.
The virtual, just out of curiosity, virtual school, do we do, or try to do that in school? Like during a class period or anything? Or-
Most kids do, sometimes
So
there
they
are
take like a
students.
study hall period and go do it during that time?
The
And do we have,
the majority of students do that.
where do they
that
do it
one.
at the library?
We actually have a room that's dedicated to virtual learning. Mrs. Shannon Blunt runs that program, so she has a learning space for those students.
How, is that a regular classroom?
Yeah, it's kind of a double wide,
Okay,
kind of a flexible space.
thank you.
I'm teaching the double.
When my kids did it, they just found a homeroom teacher, and that homeroom teacher kind of sponsored their space. And they would just take that class material in,
Sure.
you know, wherever it was.
And some go to the library and.
Yeah,
I'm just making sure we make as many accommodations as possible.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The next class we're really excited about, we currently have a class called Environmental Science. It's a semester-long class. They're proposing to create a year-long environmental sustainability class. So it'll take our current environmental class and go much deeper with the content. Also creating an opportunity for students to do real-life data collection on projects right here in Muskego and or on the campus. Partnered with this will be 10 hours of community service hours, and then the ACT skills related to experimental design and implementation will be a focus of the class. The science teacher who's proposing that actually used to work for the DNR and has contacts. She's already reached out to the city of Muskego for students to work on projects to improve the community.
Do we have any other class that requires community service hours?
We do at the middle school level. There's a class called Careers in Community. It's embedded right within that class. But we don't have many classes that require community service hours. However, with the shift of the state report card, which will be monitoring the amount of community service our students do, we're looking for ways to embed it where it makes sense so that there's better equity for all students to have an ability to participate in service learning. Because we know that sometimes when students leave school, they may not have transportation, or they may have a job or a sport, and they may not be able to participate equally.
So would this be, the community service, is it this during the school days that they'd be doing their community service, or would you just say about transportation, so?
Yeah, I'm not sure what Chris has in mind in terms of when that would take place.
So it's not community service, it's just doing it during class. It's just the day after,
Yeah.
it's just class outside the classroom.
Yeah, but for students who need that type of accommodation, she plans to have them do something related to environmental sustainability right at the high school
Okay.
to better the environment there.
Okay.
The next one is pretty exciting. It's called Connect, and it's really a shift in what we currently call youth apprenticeship or co-op. And so rather than having two programs where students have the ability to earn credit for work-based learning, we're just going to connect them to employability options through the program called Connect. There's going to be a number of options for students. So there's an actual classroom piece. So the Classroom Connect is a semester-long class where they'll learn employability skills, career clusters, design a resume, get a LinkedIn account, etc. That class exists currently, and it's paired up with co-op students. By having this Classroom Connect class, it would be open to any student, whether they're in a job or not. So students who are interested in learning those skills, but maybe aren't employed, they could still take the class. Then we talked to you a few weeks ago about different levels of experience, like what we're exploring with Impro. And a level 4 experience is approximately 45 hours of work-based learning. A level 5 experience is about 90 hours of workplace learning, and a full-out youth apprenticeship ranges between 180 and 450 hours of work-based learning, depending on the career that they're in. And so within the Connect umbrella, students would have the ability to earn credit for any of those situations. So for a Connect 45, it would be a quarter credit. The Connect 90 would be a half credit. Connect Academy is summer experiential learning, which would be a 45-hour experience for a quarter credit. And then the Connect YA is a youth apprenticeship, which is a 1 credit opportunity.
Does this document go out to the public to see? It's just that apprenticeship is spelled wrong.
Oh, okay. I'll take it. I'll correct that and re-upload it. Thank you. Then the next item listed is not a class, it's a program. CLEP stands for College Level Entrance Program, or Examination Program. And the CLEP program is owned by College Board. College Board also owns Advanced Placement, so it's another avenue for students to earn college credit. CLEP is very similar to AP. There is a test, and if students earn within a certain range on a test, they may be eligible for college credit, depending on an individual college's CLEP policy. We did some studying around colleges that accept CLEP credits, and it varies, but the majority of UW schools accept the majority of CLEP credits, and even more private schools do. CLEP is accepted nationwide, so it's not just in Wisconsin. They tend to accept even more CLEP credit on the East and West Coast than we do here in the Midwest. But just to give you an example, Introduction to Business Law, Principles of Management, Principles of Marketing, those are 3 CLEP classes or CLEP tests that we currently don't have an AP offering or a college credit offering that would allow students to earn credit. But if we look at possibly aligning our current curriculum in the business department where it makes sense to some of these tests, a student could take a high school class taught by a high school instructor and then take a CLEP test and possibly earn college credit for it. We would look to being a CLEP site, which means our kids could test right on our site, as opposed to driving to Carroll, WCTC, Milwaukee, Marquette, any college, any local college is a current CLEP testing provider. And as curriculum goes through reviews, we would look for opportunities to make amendments where it makes sense.
So, anybody can take a CLEP test, so that means if somebody took Calculus 1 and they got through it and they're like, I really know this, I understand this, I really would take an AP, they could take a CLEP test. How much is it for $85?
It's $85 for a test.
Okay. The only risk is it sounds like maybe it's not as well accepted as AP, or is it?
You know, every college has their own acceptance policy for AP and for CLEP.
Right.
So as an example, you might get a 4 on a calculus AP test, and one college might give you 5 credits, and another college might give you 10, or another college might give you 0. So you brought calculus up, I'll just give you an example. If you earn a 65 out of 100 possible points, Madison gives you 3 credits. Whitewater, if you earn a 50 out of 100, Whitewater gives you 3 credits. Oshkosh, if you earn a 55 out of 100, they give you 4 credits. Stout, if you earn a 50, they give you 4 credits. Green Bay, if you earn a 50, they give you 4 credits. La Crosse, if you earn a 50, they give you 5 credits. That's for calculus, as an example.
For CLEP.
For CLEP.
So the money you save, maybe you don't have to take electives if they give you the credit. I mean, if they...
It's mostly
yeah.
the gen ed classes, so it would be
Yeah.
like the classes students would take the first 2 years of college.
Required to take a math class, you got 5 credits in the math.
Well, right, so, that's always the regress that you pay for any test, as Christie says, and then you're basically, if the calc class you have to take is 5, and you get 3, well, you're still taking that calc class at the college, but at least you get 3 credits less of any elective that you have to take. So there's a benefit there in cost, right? It's $85 for the test, or the 700, right? So.
The other huge advantage in schools like UW, where it's hard to get classes, as you get to your upper level classes, it's hard to get those classes, especially as a sophomore and junior, because when you register, you get these extra credits regardless of what they're in. You may become a sophomore or a junior or a senior sooner, so then you get the classes and you can get out sooner.
That's a good point.
Because there's kids that are stranded in college that can't get the class.
It's a great
they want.
opportunity for us to offer.
So the $1,000 for the staff to take a CLEP test, do they have to take a test for each? Does the staff have to be, I guess, tested for each exam that they're going to give, or is that just a general, like, proctoring exam?
In the
Or
proposal,
Yeah.
the $1,000 that's in there is for, so we wouldn't have to fund any staff development. There is no requirement for our staff to teach any curriculum related to CLEP at all. But for the classes that we think there might be an alignment, I would propose that our teachers actually take a CLEP test in that content area, just to make sure there is alignment, and if there's not, to know what kind of shift we would need to make to better prepare our students. So for example, the 3 classes that I named in the business, I would propose that our business department engage in taking a CLEP test so they know exactly the content that's on those tests.
Can't they just use a fake student name and pay the 85 instead of 1,000?
Yeah, it's $85 a test, but when
It says
you.
1,000 for the staff.
Well, when,
the number of students, or staff members taking.
yeah, so when you have, that's 10 tests about. So if there's 3 in business and 3 in math and 2 in English, there's 1,000, so.
I'm just curious if that money would be spent better if they went to some sort of conference on CLEP, where they would have like breakout sessions, where they would learn stuff about the questions and the content that's on the exam. There's gotta be conferences out there that.
So I don't think that CLEP, was designed or wasn't intended for the purpose in which we would be seeking approval. From my research, it was designed for those people who had exposure to curriculum, but didn't have exposure to a certified AP teacher or college level classes. And it was to create better equity for all students who maybe had exposure to content, but didn't have programs like AP in their school. I also found that it was built to better equalize for people who are in the military and maybe are stationed away so that they can study and pass out of content but not become behind as a result of being, overseas, for example. So.
But I'm surprised that the CLEP organization or whoever's running that doesn't have tools to help educators know how to educate.
Yeah, they have study guides.
They
do
do
have study guides, yeah, which we would purchase.
Right. But they don't have conferences.
I haven't seen anything like that, no.
Because taking a test is, I don't know how much you can learn from that. I mean, if I would take the state boards again for my RN license, I don't know if that would really benefit me as an educator. I would rather know how are they writing the questions and what is the content that's involved in that kind of overview than just taking a test. I don't know how that would help.
So did you look at all, so you talked about calculus. Did you look at maybe the UW system as to when they take an AP calculus and they get a 3 or higher, how many credits maybe UW is giving versus if they pass CLEP? Is it similar or is it?
They're all different. They're all different. So there's, let me see if I can find it here. I don't have all of the AP score cuts documented.
Do you have anything that matches up those two?
There was a history one that's listed here. So like the history ones that they have, there's probably about 10 of them. Western Civilization 1 and 2 would be equivalent to one of our AP classes. It's noted as 2 separate classes and 3 credits, except at some colleges it's up to 10 credits because they all give different. So I think it was Stephen's point, if you got a 3 or better on the history AP test, you got 3 credits. For the same content, you could get 6 credits through CLEP.
Yeah,
but that's just one example,
right.
And some accept differently, so.
Right. So are we gonna have students opting to not take AP and take CLEP because they find out that Stephen's point is gonna give them 6
Yeah.
versus 3?
Possibly,
Do we care?
I don't think I care about that. They would enroll in an AP class because
Right.
that's where they would learn their
Right,
content.
and then not
but-
take the test and take the.
Yeah, but if you can take a CLEP test and get 6 credits or take an AP class and get 3, that's just being a smart consumer.
Well, but do
We
we
do the same
care?
with CAP now.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
in
but-
CAP, you don't have to take a test. You just gotta get a grade in that class.
So is that, I know we're always looking at our AP,
Yeah.
how many take, how many pass, are we concerned about that?
No, I think in the scheme of where we're going, we're really trying to prepare kids and provide them with all kinds of different opportunities to get, to be prepared for college. So we want, again, lots of things on the table for lots of different kids.
Okay.
And we know that we may not be on the AP honor roll next year, or it may be a few years, but that's okay if we're serving your kids the right way.
Okay.
I'd be interested in seeing that data too, you know, when you bring back the AP, all the AP stuff, how we do it.
Yeah.
So my question is, so if a student were to take the AP, again, let's say calculus, they took the AP exam, if they took the CLEP exam and scored, possibly they could get more credits, even though they've already taken the AP exam, like,
No, you can't double dip for the same content. So like if you have an AP Calc and you got 3 credits there and then you take CLEP and you get 5, you can only submit 1 for Calc.
okay, but you don't have to submit the AP though.
No,
Okay, so you have that option.
you have the option.
You could always take the AP and then say for the $85, I wanna take the, yeah.
I got a 2, and now I wanna try.
Or maybe even a 4, I
Yeah.
mean, if you can get 3 more credits out of it. So they have that option though.
Yeah,
They're
and
not
that's
stuck in the AP score if they
Right.
think they can do better with CLEP, or
Yeah.
get more.
another added benefit would be for students who don't pass their AP exam and then say like June, July, they get their results. They could come in campus and take a CLEP test in the same content area and have a second chance, like immediately.
Which helps us with our full calendar thing. Our kids are at a disadvantage of taking the AP so early,
Yeah.
that they kind of have a,
Yeah, so it would give them another opportunity if they don't pass with a 3 or higher.
so we don't need to change time to high schools now.
CLEP saves the world. If anyone's interested, I'd be happy to share the spreadsheet that is, I don't know, 200 rows deep and 45, no, it's long, but it's very interesting. I'll share it with you.
Please.
I contacted some colleges just to see what do you perceive when you see CLEP? So I guess how it happens is when you have a College Board account, so if you have a child with AP, you have a College Board account, and you go to that account, you select what college you're sending your scores to. You do the same thing with CLEP, it's on that same account, it's just listed there as CLEP, and you shoot them electronically to the colleges that you want. And Madison, Oshkosh, Whitewater, they all said, yes, we accept CLEP, we encourage kids to fulfill as many credits as they're able to before they get here. I said to Madison, what happens if a kid's got 25 credits in AP and 15 in CLEP and 10 in CAP? And they're like, awesome, the more the merrier.
They're halfway done through college by that point.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
It's a matter of whether you're meeting the college's requirements.
Right, because, so for instance, my oldest daughter had 7 APs, but she got 21 credits. But of course, they weren't all in the area that they were requiring, so it really didn't get her 21 overall.
Right. So if as a student you need 12 humanities credits as a requirement and you come in with 15, those 3 credits over, all they do is become elective credits. They don't fulfill a requirement.
Become you, and that's why I said we're, the advantage of those just is make you register for classes earlier.
Sure. Okay, fun. And then the last one is just name changes. So no curriculum changes, just better clarifying for students and parents. That financial independence is really personal finance. And the art foundations 1 and 2 are related to 2D and 3D art. I just wanted to clarify that for families and for students. Any questions for me?
I think we gave you much.
Nice job on the committee.
Thank you.
Very informative.
They're some of the most in-depth discussions I've seen.
Okay, and then I'm sending you the CLEP spreadsheet now, for anyone who's interested.
Thank you.
So what about a summer course on,
How to register for high school?
no. What about a summer course for college essays?
So we could do that. We would not be able to give high school credit for it.
Well, unless you, I'm not just saying, yeah.
Partial.
Because it's only a partial part of a class.
Well, what about if you had a summer class that was full credit that included the college essay? An English class that included college essay?
We could explore that.
I think currently our only English class that's offered is like remediation.
Well, of course, it's only giving you 0.5, and you need 4. So that'd be interesting to, well, I suppose you could have a half a semester at the, your senior year, where you don't have to take an English class.
Yeah, or you could do 4.5,
Yeah.
graduate with 4.5.
Correct. So, yeah, I think that might be interesting, or would be, people may show some interest in that for those students that really have that urge to get that in on September 1st. Basically, they would end their summer session at the end of July. Most of the time, these schools are releasing what your essay's about August 1st or before. Yeah, it might be worth giving that a try.
Always looking at wanting to grow that summer school.
Do we get any additional funds for summer school or anything?
Pardon me?
Do we get any additional funds for summer school or anything?
If it's a course.
In the college world, we do.
Right.
So it's like.
Only if it's, we can't necessarily put enrichment in there for high school level. So we can't do something that we don't already offer during the school year. So, but if it's an extension or if it's the course, like Phy-Ed and health, then we can give the credit, then we can count those students, their hours, not a full student, we would never get.
FTEs.
Yeah, so for example, you saw how many students participated in summer school, it was almost 2,000 students participated in our summer program in K-12, and that equated to about 163 FTEs. So yes, it does.
Every minute counts.
That is the theme of the evening.
Anything else, Miss? No? Moving on to 8D, van purchase, lease purchase for activities. Julie?
Yeah, so we wanted to bring forward an idea, working with Ryan, he's come from a district where things operated slightly differently, and we were looking at ways that we can save money within his budget. One of the things that we have been exploring, and we had talked with Kari too, because she has been purchasing vans for her activities as well. But we have opportunities if we were to purchase vans, and these are 10-passenger vans, which is legally all that we can get. If we had a small fleet of them, that we could really offset a lot of our busing costs that we currently have. So for example, we do have smaller co-curriculars for some of our teams, like golf, for instance. They take a full 72-passenger bus to wherever they need to go, when they in turn could take vans and save on the cost of having those buses. And so The activities department did an analysis, and through that analysis found that if they had about 3 vans, they could save about $50,000 a year in bus costs. So we could essentially transfer the, their transportation budget to cover the cost of purchasing vans. However, we are mid-year. That was assuming it'd be for the full year, and a van is about $27,000. So looking at the information that's been provided with the billing through the activities department, we believe that we could purchase 1 van and really use the activities budget to support that, because it would be offset from what they would have paid in busing costs anyway. The only issue is that we would really need 3 to accomplish what we want to accomplish for savings, and we don't have 3, $27,000 times 3 in the budget. So an option for us could be, a number of things. One, we could look at purchasing 1 this year and then leasing 2 with a lease with the option to buy after a year and build it into our budget for 1920. We looked at renting vans, and that would equate to about $50,000 a year if we rented those. And that's for 1, like renting 1 every day. I know it was ridiculous. It was obscene. Like, we could just rent them for a couple.
Maybe we should start.
It doesn't work that way. But we are looking at creative ways that we could potentially get 3 vans, see what it looks like, see where the savings is, and then if there's opportunity, we could eventually grow the fleet. This would also help us. In springtime, we have huge issues finding buses to support going from school to the co-curriculars to field trips and all the other things that people are trying to do in the spring. And so just kind of total package, this is a great opportunity for us. However, we're still looking at the dollars associated with it. But I wanted to get, before we went too far, just get your thoughts on it and how you feel about that idea of having a fleet of vans for athletics and activities.
What's this 10-passenger van? I keep hearing this maximum capacity. I don't know what that is, if that's a state law.
It's a state law.
Then why does Franklin run mini buses in their own district?
Mini buses are different because they require a different license to drive them.
Who can drive out these vans? Who we get them?
Anybody.
Okay, so that's where we'll just start boxing up. What is the liability on this? Because, okay, so now we have to start submitting all of our driving records for all our coaches into our insurance, I'm assuming. We're going to be having.
Which we do now anyway. So any of our coaches who drive students are registered drivers within our system. We do a transportation background check, and we maintain their personal insurance on file.
Okay.
So that's our process now anyway, because we do have some coaches who, if they're running 3 kids to state, they're not taking a bus.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a process.
Does that change our impact that Coach A has free speeding tickets now that he's actually be driving a van versus the incidental using his personal vehicle?
We would have to be cautious as to which coaches we allow, just as we would now, which coaches we allow driving the vehicles and not driving them.
If you were to propose this, I would like to see some numbers of what co-curriculars that you're talking about.
Sure.
Because I just know, like, tennis, if the varsity tennis team went somewhere, it's 12 people. So it's like, that would eliminate the 10 passenger. So I was just curious.
It'd be 2, right? Because they probably
would have to take 2.
They have to take, which is why we kind of need 3 to realize the savings. If we just had 1, it wouldn't be enough. If you have 3, it creates that flexibility.
Maybe just see the numbers of like that, how that breaks down, that would be awesome.
We have that spreadsheet.
I can contact Under Armour and see how much they would pay us to have that.
Well,
he's going to want to wrap, he's going to want this looking with our stuff anyway. That's his whole initiative, so why not?
I'll have Ryan will call and ask anything.
I know, so why, he's shameless at it, so find out if, at the very least, maybe we can get all the graphics on it for free.
Get a wrap on it.
That's what I'm saying, why not? He's gonna wanna wrap it anyway, so.
Yeah.
Save the $2,500 there.
So basically what our spreadsheet shows is any of the busing costs that we had last year for all of our co-curriculars and athletics, where we feel there was enough students that we could have just used vans instead.
So
I'm sure he's already done the numbers, so.
why don't you research that 10, because
Sure.
CDL in Wisconsin, you don't have to have a CDL if you have 15 or less passengers, including the driver. So I'm not sure where this 10's coming from. And they do make vans, like Ford makes a 15-passenger van, and they make it specifically so you don't have to have a CDL to carry 15 people. So I'm not sure where the 10's coming from.
It's a state law that was enacted, and I believe, and I'm
Specific
not
to
100% sure, but it's specific to schools. And I think it had to do with, I believe there was like a terrible accident that happened with a group of, I want to say it was from a church.
Oh, was this that whole book selling thing?
Magazines.
Magazines and
I
shit.
think it was something to do with that, where there was a terrible
I remember
accident,
that.
and then there were so many kids in, I can double check it though. I will double check.
Yeah,
I know
double
from
check.
liability purposes, our insurer will not insure more than 10 passenger vans. But I did not ask specifically about small buses, so that could be an opportunity that we.
Because
could
my
look at
thought
as well.
is similar to yours,
Yeah, it's like-
basketball team is gonna be probably 15.
Right.
Golf team's probably gonna be close to
Well,
9,
and
10,
what, look,
11.
basketball, what do you say, you got 45 kids you gotta transport?
Well,
3
Well,
levels.
the varsity does a lot of tournaments, I guess, on the weekends, and it would stay in
Yeah,
that.
okay.
It's when they break them off into varsity JV and that you see that separation, but like I was saying, tennis is 12, so it's like, I don't see what.
Unless
that
they're
would
going
be.
to regionals or state, and then
Yeah,
it's.
right, then it would,
those type of
yeah,
things.
narrow it down.
Don't they usually all go
And
to
as you know,
JV and the varsity?
also retirement school, that's how they transport their
No.
sports teams now.
Because sometimes the JV freshmen play here and varsity plays there.
Okay, I'll bring back the numbers, we'll have Brian back here at the next time as well. We'll have him call Nermer, but I will research to see small buses versus vans, if there's a distinction, because that could be.
well, I'm guessing if you have a small bus, then you're gonna have to have a CDL driver, which means you're gonna have to employ. Franklin, what they do is they employ bus drivers. The school district employs bus drivers to drive the small buses, which kind of brings on more personnel.
Right.
But there, I know of certain parents that drive buses for the school district that might do some honeymooning. with
And they
some
will,
driving and stuff.
and teachers may want to get their CDL.
They may, if they're gonna pay more, absolutely they would. I mean, obviously Eric's got one, it can't be that hard to get.
No, you can drive.
Actually,
You can do some moonlighting on the side.
Okay, we'll bring back that information, anything else?
That's probably why I bring it up in the.
Just, I assume the coaches are good with, they wouldn't mind driving.
As soon, Ryan talked with the coaches about it, and as soon as they brought it up, they were like, when can we start signing up? Because there are things that we already know we can do, and even with some of the co-curriculars, it just makes sense to have something like that.
Well, I mean, and I'm not trying to put a damper on your bonfire here, but
It's a small bonfire right now.
it's huge.
It's fine.
But even if you got one,
Yeah.
you could basically study how many times you used the one and how much you saved in busing versus, it might not be a bad way to start either, instead of going in with all three and finding out, we're not really saving money, but we got 3 vans to give to special ed. She'd love it.
I Okay. All right, we'll bring that back next time.
Or
Thank you.
Jeremiah.
Put a ball in front of it.
Put a what?
Put a ball in front of it.
Put it on the back.
Drag a snowball.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8E, Lakeview air conditioning. Jeremiah, you awake over there?
So each year we bring forward capital construction projects to be done. The list has shrunk substantially over the past couple of years because we've dropped off Muskego and test corners and have been addressing things all along. The very top of the plan, when we weight all the criteria, Lakeview air conditioning comes in as the top need. So what we're proposing is doing a design bid process where we would pay to have it designed and then competitively bid out. That would include wrapping the air conditioner with Under Armour. It would be a chiller system, which is similar to what we had at Lake Danoon in the high school. You guys might remember we had interviewed Ben, the student over last year, and so he had some ideas about putting sleeve air conditioners in, kind of like you'd see in hotels, but the issue is you have to bring in fresh air into school settings, so we would still have to run a fresh air cycle plus that, and they would almost cancel each other out. The next cheapest option, if it were a normal building, we'd be able to put rooftop units in, but there's not a lot of clearance above the ceiling, so there's nowhere to work with ducts. So we have to utilize the cabinet heaters with the chilled system, which would create heating and cooling pipes that would run through the system. That would replace out all the cabinet heaters, which are 50 years old, and it would also replace out their pneumatic controls with digital controls, which would give more local control. So we would work with Frederick's Engineering to draw up the scope and then start the bid process in December and bring it back to the board with the results of the bids.
Where's the 60 finance from?
I would take it out of our operations budget.
Your operations budget?
Yeah.
So do we have, is there a ballpark that,
Yeah, it's at 700,000.
Approximately 700,000.
and that's pretty firm, you think?
That's what Frederickson is
Okay.
anticipating it to be.
And if that, I guess we can wait, but if that was to happen, say, if what was to happen, would you be able to bring back some sort of a plan on how, or where the dollars would come from?
That would come from our capital construction budget, so every year that is.
So you'd be able to fund that completely out of that?
Yeah, we would definitely have to look at the numbers. So last year we did 550, and depending on, this is really like a new baseline year for facilities because we have expanded facilities and energy usage and all types of moving numbers this year. So we'll have to see where everything kind of falls and our ability to be able to fund that wholly through the B&G budget or through our budget process, looking to close the gap with like $100,000.
Are we able, do we have any of that fund, that
46.
4 or 5 year fund that?
Yep, in 2020 we will.
Okay, so there would be some options that maybe we don't do it in 2019, but 2020 or something to the.
We could fall back to doing roofing, but the good thing is we would have the engineered design, and that's kind of the approach I want to take, because if we design, build it, you're really putting that package together for someone to do.
All right.
How
Thank
long
you.
is that design, how long is that design good for us? 5, 10 years? It's not like every 2 years you gotta redesign it for
What I would imagine, as long as we didn't make any substantial changes to the building and mechanicals didn't all of a sudden change code or something like that. Yeah. And just for the board's information, Lakeview is the only school that doesn't have air conditioning after all the reconstruction of Mill Valley and Muskego Lakes.
Anything else? All right, we got the information follow-up. Any requested information follow-up? Hearing none, and vote for closed session. I'm gonna read the closed
Yep.
session.
Vote for closed session for 22 Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating concerning public properties whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically sale of public property and master planning. Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of specific persons, specifically Dave's evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll be in closed session in 5 minutes.
We will only reconvene.
We are only reconvening to adjourn and go home. Thank you.
Do you think that's how long it's gonna take?
Brewers
Jefferson
are
Water